promised us, "Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." Jesus, do not allow us to be indifferent to those who today mourn the loss of a loved one. To our brothers and sisters who have contracted and are suffering due to the COVID-19 disease, we pray that God's healing hand may rest upon them. And to those who suffer from the absence of work, Jesus, hear their cries. Whatever tomorrow may bring, we will praise your name. We will always muster the strength to continue working for your kingdom in this time of pandemic. Give us the courage to accompany and side with those who suffer violence or injustice. Lord, times are difficult, but we will stand strong and wait on you. Thank you for being here for us when fear threatens our resolve. We pray that your will be done because we know that you love us and your will is what is best. We pray these things in Jesus' great name. Amen. I am Jarvis Salindogan, and on behalf of the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, we welcome all the government officials, dignitaries, guests and participants, speakers, and the general public to this Intellectual Property Grand Forum held live via Zoom and Facebook, titled Intellectual Property and the MSMEs, Our Road to Recovery. This forum is the culminating event of the National Intellectual Property Month, where we gather the best speakers who will be able to give us current information about the MSMEs who are playing a major role in the growth of our economy, even during these trying times. Before we formally start our forum, we would like to thank our media partner for this year's National Intellectual Property Month, DOOH Philippines, for the digital out-of-home advertisements for our month-long celebration this April. Allow me to introduce our distinguished moderator, who is also an influencer and advocate for the MSMEs, an honorary consul of Monaco, a successful entrepreneur, an educator, and a celebrity since his younger years. Let us all welcome our IP ambassador, Mr. RJ Ledesma.
Again, thank you very much for that very generous introduction, Jarvis. Again, magandang umaga po. Good morning to all of our guests coming in from the Philippines and from all over the world. It is truly my pleasure and my privilege to serve not only as your host this morning, but also as your IP ambassador for the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines. And this particular talk is close to my heart, as it is one that helps champion our micro, small, and medium enterprises, our MSMEs. Now, I wear many hats. I wish I had just as many heads. My first interaction together with IPOPhil was as a creative writer, as an author, and having my books trademarked through the IPO and my copyrighted through the IPO was a very big thing for me as I started off. And now wearing my hat as an entrepreneur, running Mercato Central, I support the growth of many small food businesses who are trying to make their way in the world towards this new normal. So hopefully, with the support of IPOPhil, we will be able to help our small entrepreneurs develop IP strategies to help better commercialize their businesses and prepare them towards success. So again, to everybody joining us here this morning, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Please stay with us for the whole forum. And before we start with our panel discussions, let us have a few words from the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines Director General, who has always been a great champion for MSMEs from the time he joined Go Negosyo until he became DTI Undersecretary, where he continuously supported the innovation and creativity process towards greater and inclusive business growth in the country. In addition to his current role as Director General of IPOPhil, he concurrently sits as Governor of the Board of Investments and is the acting chairman of the Cagayan Economic Zone Authority. Ladies and gentlemen, mga kaibigan, please welcome a champion for MSMEs and for intellectual property here in the Philippines, my very good friend, Attorney Roel S. Barba.
Maraming salamat, Idol RJ. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Kailan lang sinimulan natin ang National IP Month na may temang intellectual property, and MSMEs, our road to recovery. At ngayon ay nalalapit na tayo sa katapusan ng buwan ng Abril. Kay bilis nga naman ng mga araw. Sa nakaraang mga araw ng Abril, marami po tayong mga kaganapan, lalo na mga webinars na inalay natin sa ating mga MSMEs, artists, creators, performers, at inventors. Hanggang mamayang hapon at hanggang bukas, meron pa po tayong nakahandang webinar para sa inyo. Pero hindi po kompleto ang IP month natin kung walang forum na kasama ang ating mga idolo at mga bigatin natin ng mga kaibigan upang ibahagi nila ang kanilang mga ideas sa topics na IP bilang powerful tool for MSMEs to create economic value through e-commerce at MSMEs bilang backbone ng global economy. Sa pagpapaunlak sa aming imbitasyon, nagpapasalamat po kami sa mga masipag, maganda at makisig nating kasamahan sa pamahalaan, DTI Undersecretary Ruth Castelo, DTI Undersecretary Bless Lantayona, Undersecretary Gani Macatoman, E-Commerce Queen, DTI Assistant Secretary Jean Pacheco, DTI Assistant Secretary at dati pong Deputy Director General ng IPOFIL, Assistant Secretary Alan Hepty, sa sarili po nating Deputy Director General at dati pong Undersecretary ng DTI, Ted Pasqua, bagong talaga na DTI Assistant Secretary Nap Juanillo, at ganun din po ang mga masisipag at makisig at magandang partners natin from the private sector. Sergio Ortiz Luis, President ng PhilExport, Carlos Barrera, COO ng Lazada, former DTI Undersecretary Carissa Cruz Evangelista, founder member ng Philippine Fashion Coalition, at Cheryl Quintana, President po ng Philippine Franchising Association at may-ari ng sikat na Oraispa. At syempre hindi mawawala ang dalawa kong idolo sa kabinete, DTI Secretary Mon Lopez at DOST Secretary Boy de la Peña. At syempre po sa moderator po natin na walang iba kundi ang bagong talaga nating IPOFIL Ambassador, ang masipag at mahusay na entrepreneur, tatay, anak at asawa, at macho pa, na walang iba kung hindi ang ating kaibigan na si RJ Ledesma. Bago po ako magtapos, isa pong karangalan na basahin ko ang pagbati ng ating Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte sa selebrasyon ng National IP Month. My warmest greetings to the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines as it spearheads the observance of National Intellectual Property Month. Intellectual property rights are vital to the sustainability of our economy, especially for micro, small, and medium enterprises or MSMEs. I thus welcome this month-long observance that brings awareness on emerging challenges in innovation, intellectual property, and competitiveness in the local and global markets amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. This year's theme is timely as it highlights the need for MSMEs to adopt measures that will protect and promote their IP rights. May this event harness the potentials of the industry to come up with innovative strategies as we deal with the challenges ahead. This administration depends on you to sustain our path towards a more progressive Philippines. May your industry and enthusiasm further inspire the Filipino people to work harder for a brighter tomorrow. I wish you a meaningful celebration. Signed, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, Manila, April 2021. Hindi lang po yan. Maraming salamat din po sa ating Pangulo sa paglagda sa instruments of accession ng ating bansa sa Beijing Treaty on Audiovisual Performance na inilagak ng ating Ambahador Evan Garcia sa WIPO kahapon. Tayo po ang 41st na bansa na kasama sa treaty na ito. Madami po sa mga kababayan natin ang makikinabang dito sapagkat alam natin na nagkalat po ang ating mga kababayan na performance sa ibang bansa as it addresses the long-standing need to extend the economic and moral rights of actors and performers in audiovisual performances, including films, videos, and television programs. At maraming salamat din po sa ating Pangulo sa paglakda sa Proclamation 190 noong 2017 na nagtalaga ng buong buwan ng Abril na IP month. Wala po tayo ngayon dito kung hindi dahil sa proclamation na ito. Kami po sa IPOFIL ay lubos nagagalak at nangangako na lalo pa naming pag-iibayuhin ang pagserbisyo sa ating mga kababayang Pilipino. Maraming salamat po at welcome to the IP Grand Forum of the 2021 National IP Month.
At maraming salamat rin, Idol Roel Barba. Thank you so much for the kind invitation po para sa akin para maging IPOFIL Ambassador. Alam mo, malapit sa puso ko yung ginagawa mong advokasya. Unang-una po bilang isang manunulat po, IPOFIL was very important in that career, and especially as we launch more MSMEs. Alam mo, we were looking for the next big food entrepreneur, and hopefully sa suporta po ng IPOFIL, we can help them develop IP strategy as a key tool for them to grow their businesses. So again, Executive Director, maraming salamat ulit, Mr. Roel Barba, for this one. One more round of applause, please. Thank you so much for all the efforts behind the success of IPOFIL here in the Philippines. And with that, mga kaibigan, moving on to our first panel here for this morning. We've got a great set of selected speakers who are all experts in their chosen fields in assisting micro, small, and medium enterprises through the years. And I'm happy that many of them are personal friends. We all have this advocacy to help our MSMEs grow because IP, intellectual property, is an extremely powerful tool for our MSMEs to create economic value through e-commerce. And let's see how IP can help them grow together with our partners. We will now be discussing here this morning how intellectual property can be a powerful tool for all of them and contribute to their growth. So please allow me to introduce our speakers for this morning. Our first speaker is the Undersecretary for the Special Concerns and Trade Promotions Group of the Department of Trade and Industry. He presently sits as chair of the Export Development Council and the Technical Working Group of the Halal Export Board. He is also the former chairman of the Foreign Chamber Council of the Philippines, chairman emeritus of the Bangsamoro Federal Business Council, and the former president and CEO of the Global Empire International Group of Companies. We will be joined by DTI Undersecretary Abdul Ghani Makatoman. He is not here present virtually in the forum, but will be sharing his insights about the topic. Moving on to our second speaker, we have the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry for 21 years. Pero wala po sa itsura yan po, no? He's highly motivated and a dedicated career executive service officer with significant contribution and experience in public sector management, specifically planning, monitoring, and evaluation, performance management, and public policy formulation. She currently hosts a YouTube channel, Trade Tayo, to provide information about the Philippines' trade and industry advocacies. Mga kaibigan, please welcome DTI Assistant Secretary Mary Jean Pacheco. Our third panel speaker was the former Undersecretary of the Department of Trade and Industry. She is now the founder and chief designer for Beatrice. Before starting her brand, she worked with a lot of community-based enterprises and assisted livelihood communities nationwide in depressed areas in the Philippines. She continues to work with communities along with factories and has won the prestigious International Katha Award in the Philippines in 2015 for her designs. An active advocate for the fashion and creative industry here in the Philippines and the founding chairwoman of the Philippine Fashion Coalition. My very good friend, idolo ko to po, si Miss Carissa Cruz Evangelista. Our fourth panelist, also a very good friend of mine and a champion of small business and e-commerce here in the Philippines. Pusong Pinoy pa siya, but born in Madrid, Spain. He was previously in the consulting industry for 5 years in Europe and South America, covering strategy, mergers, and acquisition projects. He came on board with Lazada in 2014, where he started in the Malaysia office before taking on his current role with Lazada Philippines. As the Chief Operating Officer of Lazada, he is in charge of overall platform traffic, category management, and seller acquisition and engagement. Mga kaibigan, please welcome Mr. Carlos Otermin Barrera. And rounding out our speakers for the first panel discussion, wow, really a powerhouse and another good friend, the president of the Philippine Franchise Association and another advocate of IP here in the Philippines. She is the founding president of Orispa Spa Solutions Incorporated. Orispa is the #1 maker of 100% natural rice brand-based wellness and beauty products in the Philippines, which is also the ASEAN Business Awardee for Healthcare. Like I said earlier on, she is the current president of the Philippine Franchise Association, where she also sits as director of MSME and homegrown franchises. Nako, ito rin po, one well-awarded entrepreneur. She is the first ever Filipina awarded the 32nd Asia Pacific Women Entrepreneur by the Confederation of Asia Pacific Chambers of Commerce and Industry in Istanbul, Turkey, and was named one of FWN's most influential Filipinas in the world back in 2018. Please welcome my good friend, President Cheryl Quintana of the Philippine Franchise Association. So again, before everything else, let's all switch on the cameras. I want to just welcome all of the people coming here today. Maybe just for one picture, can we just have that one picture with all our guests here? Can we bring them all on the screen, please? All our first speakers for this panel discussion. Ayan po, thank you so much for joining us here today. If it's possible, we can just have one photo of all of us here with all the speakers together with Director Barba. Can we please bring to the front of the screen our speakers, which include, of course, Assistant Secretary Mary Jean Pacheco, together with Carissa Cruz Evangelista, Carlos Barrera, and Ms. Cheryl Quintana. Again, thank you so much for joining us here this morning. Of course, together with Secmon. Secmon, good morning po, Idol Secmon. Looking good and healthy nowadays. Sir Pasqua, thank you so much for joining us. Let's all smile for one photo over here. And of course, Mr. Al Hepti, let's picture lang po tayo lahat. Big smiles. Ayan, Carissa, take your picture as well. Maraming salamat. Thank you so much. And with that, let's begin with our forum. Kung mga tanong po kayo, I'm sure many of you have got great insights and questions. Please share that in the chat box. We would love to hear from you later on. At kita mo, buong suporta ng ating gobyerno yung ating mga MSMEs. Again, Secmon, idol ko, thanks. You're looking so
morning,
good.
everyone. Good morning.
Morning, Secmon. We will see you in just a bit. And with that, let's continue with today's panel discussion. In the meantime, as Yusek Makatoman could not make it, he has prepared a short video to share his insights on how MSMEs can be supported through proper IP strategy. Please, let's show the video of Yusek Makatoman. And as they pull up our video here right now, if you've got questions on how you can be supported by the IPOFIL office, or you've got questions about intellectual property and you have some concerns, please feel free to post all of your concerns, questions, insights in the chat box. Nakabantay po yung ating mga kasama mula sa IPOFIL to be able to answer your questions. So again, if I can kindly request Jarvis, if they can show our video.
Yes, sir, RJ.
Okay, let's air the video. Thank you.
Very good morning to everyone. It is a great honor to be invited as one of the panel speakers for the IP Grant Forum. I will be discussing the topic, IP is a powerful tool for SMEs to create economic value through e-commerce. But before that, allow me to acknowledge the presence of our beloved Secretary Ramon Lopez, my very good friend, IPOPIL Director General Roel Barba, Yusek Cruz Castelo, ASEC Jean Pacheco, ASEC Alan Hepte, PhilExport President Sergio Ortiz Luis Jr., IPOPIL Deputy Director General Ted Pasqua, Philippine Franchising Association President Cheryl Quintana, Philippine Fashion Coalition Founder Member Carissa Cruz Evangelista, Lazada Philippines Chief Operating Officer Carlos Barrera, as well as the attendees to today's forum. In today's global innovation economy, the internet has become a revolutionary technology which is known to empower consumers and businesses alike with the blessings of connectivity at all levels. With the overwhelming use of the internet, intellectual property plays an important role in e-commerce as it safeguards the business interests of a company or an individual against unfair competition. Through e-commerce, MSMEs can reach out to be more potential consumers not only within the country but also in the international markets. E-commerce not only became a means for businesses to keep afloat during the pandemic, but in some cases even help MSMEs expand their markets. While e-commerce provides MSMEs new avenues to promote and sell their products and services, e-commerce also possesses the challenge of exposing the company's creation to counterfeiters. As such, IP protection should be in the forefront of MSME business strategies more than ever. One MSME, Camel Albarracin of Everything Green Trading and Consulting, whose trademark have been recently approved and an industrial design published, said that IP has impacted our business through validation of our creativity and protection of ingenuity of our design and brand, especially as we want to scale up the Filipino brand or identity. Through IP, it has helped us turn that vision into reality through protection of brand and product innovation. Realizing the economic value of IP in her business, Miss Albarracin is now an active player in IP creation, protection, and commercialization. The DTI Trade Promotions Group have ongoing programs to help our MSMEs become aware and understand the value of IP protection for their products and designs. We have partnered with IP Appeal in the conduct of trainings and webinars, enrollment for IP rights, trademark registration for brands, collective mark registration of product, as in the case of SciTeam's Value Food Innovation Program, and collaboration on the content PTTC GEMIA programs wherein intellectual property topics can be integrated. PTTC and IP Appeal are working together the development of a full IP academic program to be offered at a later time. In a nutshell, it can be noted that without intellectual property rights, the fair compliance of activities and practices can never be achieved in such a dynamic and diverse world of e-commerce and online businesses. With the rapid growth in technological inventions, IP rights help in safeguarding and maintaining the secrecy of trade activities while providing the actual share of profits to the IP right owners. Therefore, it will not be wrong to say that IP rights stand as a protective guard to the activities of the e-commerce arena, whose rate of success is completely dependent upon the implementation of effective IP rights measures. Before I end, I would like to congratulate once again IP Upil for organizing this forum. I hope our MSMEs present today will gain valuable knowledge on the importance of IP as a tool to create economic value through e-commerce. Thank you. Maraming salamat at mabuhay po tayong lahat.
And again, thank you so much, Yusek Makatoman, for joining us via video stream here today. Really appreciate the insights that you brought here and at least elaborated and clarified on how IP strategy can be used by the smaller businesses. And as I continue with my talk here right now, I'd just like to greet, yesterday, this has been the IP week for me. Yesterday, I was able to host a forum for SciTem and IFEX, and I'd like to greet lang Director Mary Grace Ichi Cruz Yap, who gave me a crash course yesterday on an IP and reminding us yung IP natin talaga sa mga nakikinig mo dito ngayon. Yan yung ating yamang isip, di ba? Hopefully, Director Ichi, tama yung sinabi ko, di ba? Director, she made sure that it's also both a moral, economic right para sa atin. Nakasulat yung mga notes po dito nyo ngayon, so huwag kayong mag-alala po. Mamaya konti, we will cover all these things as we talk about them. And just as a little interesting thing, no, I will just turn off very briefly for instructive purposes my video. If you see my video here right now, that's actually one of my books which I came out with in my first interaction. Medyo nakakatawa po, but yan yung ginawa kong first book ko called Is It Hot in Here or Is It Me? It was actually a book which I had to get an IP for as well to at least get a copyright for my original work. I don't know if I was able to trademark my image over there, but at least I was able to copyright the work over there. And I think it's very important because I started to realize at that time that I could actually monetize and commercialize my written work, but I had to protect the work in the first place. And now that I've moved on to becoming an entrepreneur and taking that role on fully, I've also learned to appreciate more through my business, Mercato Central, the importance of preserving my IP. Because like for many of us, when your business is successful, many people also want to ride on the coattails of your success and sometimes copy your image, copy your trademark, the way that you do business. We want to protect that for our entrepreneurs and provide a strong motivator for us to continue working hard to build and scale our business. And since we're covering over here e-commerce, and I'm so glad that Lazada is here as well to expound later on, no? But as we expose more of our products online and gain a bigger market, we'll also have more people who want to be able to pirate our products, to copy our products, to see how they can take advantage of our products. And IPOFIL is here to help us, to protect us, to ensure that that doesn't happen, and that that's why we have to provide a clear strategy. And talking about strategy, I want to start off muna with ASEC. ASEC Gene, if you can join us here first, no, ASEC Gene. Let's talk about you're talking with so many of the MSMEs, and you're good at project formulation and project management. So ASEC Gene, as we begin with this one, can you share with us really how people can work together with DTI and how you've seen actually some of the small businesses who've been able to utilize who have properly have gotten their proper intellectual property assets and has helped them build stronger businesses because it was because of their IP, they were able to expand abroad or create more jobs because they were able to properly commercialize their IP asset.
Good morning, RJ, and congratulations to intellectual property. Of course, hello, sir, to our boss, Secmon Lopez, and to everyone here in the panel. I actually tried. I'd like to share a few things. Is it okay if I
Yes, please,
share
ma'am.
a couple of slides?
Yes, ma'am,
I
please
just
do.
wanted. Thank you. And can I just ask the secretary if I can be allowed to share my screen?
Jarvis, can you allow her to share screen, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. This is I think I'd like to sort of put a certain context on this assignment given to me by DG Roel. Sir, gusto ko ako yung maganda portion, no? So, may masipag, may maganda. So, ginawa akong e-commerce queen. So, naging e-commerce queen. So, we've always talked about e-commerce, and for this very part, in related na rin to sir's question, right? This is the topic. IP is a powerful tool for SMEs to create economic value through e-commerce. No, so I said, when we crafted the e-commerce roadmap, in the process, one of the important things, that one of the key pillars that people were really looking at addressing was intellectual property. That is why intellectual property is a cornerstone in the crafting of the e-commerce roadmap. And I do remember, we had a brown bag session, and I do remember that this is my key takeaway, and that IP is basically a private right, and the proper person to claim that right is the owner of that right. So the advocacy of DTI, the e-commerce included, is really to make sure that the brand owners really do register, because we really want people to respect the intellectual property rights of others. I won't go into the consumer protection part because that's in the, I think Yusek Ruth will tackle that one. But really the advocacy, I think that's the key term here, is that we need to advocate to the SMEs the need for them to protect their rights, no, and the first thing that they do is really to register, their trademarks and protect their brand. As you can see here, no, this is really a, I won't go into the details, but the function of the e-commerce roadmap is to make sure that we keep our eye on the ball, and by that we mean we need to make sure that there's structure, security, speed, because all of that will result to sales. So as you can see, it's really intellectual property is part of security, because we really need to protect the rights of the brand owners, no, and we are encouraging that SMEs talaga will register, no, so that they can, as I said, protect their rights. So that's one. So that's the first message, that the first thing is we need to advocate so that people or SMEs will actually register their trademark so that they will protect their brands. Ngayon, the next message that when I was asked to speak, I was thinking, what's and then I remember that I went to ano ba to, yung Germany na training ng innovation, and then something struck me talaga. Sinabi doon, innovation is new to the business, not new to the world. I can't forget that. That's the easiest innovation definition that I've learned. So if it's new to your firm, it's innovation. Pagkabago, invention daw yon. So ngayon, digitalization is a necessity. So you can see here, no, a study that we're looking at all of these studies to help our SMEs also when we do program development or policy. So if you notice, kita nyo, if you compare ourselves, no, the Epson did a white paper. So many are doing digital transformation. Kita nyo, marketing and sales, Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, mostly marketing and sales. Customer interaction and servicing, that's Malaysia and Singapore. No, yun yung mga top of line. But it is only Thailand that is really strong on production and manufacturing, which makes us think na talagang yun yung kanilang priority. But there are also challenges for Thailand. So those again, that's what government is doing. We're trying to study what SME needs, no, to help them. Which brings me to this little story that I'd like to share lang. I know this is quite familiar to, and yung ate ko kasi talaga, no, I was so proud kasi nag-text siya sa akin para sabihin, Miss Cheryl, ay, hello. Kita nyo naman, sabi niya, diba, nag-text siya sa akin kasi bumili siya, kasi lagi siya white flower and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, nag-text siya sa akin, ang galing, ganda-ganda nito, bumili ako. Sa Shopee daw siya bumili. And I realized how valuable, di ba? So we checked, no, it's naka-trademark. And so we want more of Corais pa, more of Cheryl Quintana. Because look at this, no, if you can really buy it in platforms like Lazada and Shopee, they have like monthly, the statistics that we have monthly visits to this platforms, like 30 million a month. So can you imagine the the potential? So I won't go into more the details, but just to let you know that there are studies that we do, and we are looking at the micro, small, medium enterprises. And then last one that I'd like to because debat yun sa topic, 3 components, and this is the best one, the last one, that e-commerce is here to stay. So, and that we're built for this, no? COVID or no COVID na, magkakaroon pa rin ng e-commerce. And we're built for this. Why? Di ba, we said that, our population is 102, but we have more mobile connections than telephone. Ito po mga kababayan, baka hindi po natin nakikita tita to, latest statistics ho to. Talaga nangunguna ho ang Pilipinas, hindi ho tayo naaansit. Number 1 ho tayo sa pinakamadaming gumagamit ng internet, 10 hours or almost 11 hours. For the past 2 years, we're checking the data and we've not really, talagang number 1. Number 1 din tayo. We are the biggest consumers of social media. So we can just imagine the potential that when people buy through e-commerce, no, and they buy your brand. E-commerce adoption has also increased from 70, 76. Now the latest is 80, 80%. The last point really is about this one, that we value, that people, I think there is already an accelerated adoption of e-commerce, and for us, for our people, our micro, small, medium enterprises to avail of all of this potential in e-commerce, we need to put our brands out there. We need to protect our intellectual property, and by doing that, and we have to adopt digital transformation, because really, the potential is very high, and we want our businesses to grow. The intellectual property code is part of the regulatory environment, and we are very happy that we're working with IPO feel very strongly the e-commerce office. So yun lang, Sir RJ, because at the end of the day, sinasabi natin basta e-commerce kasi madali. So thank
Ayan.
you for that.
Ma'am, Isaac Jean, is it possible for those listening to the conference right now to have an access to your presentation as well? Because it's a really great source material, especially for me, and as I was listening. So if they can get access to that one, probably you can just put it in the chat box or something where they can access it. At the same time,
Yes.
mukhang ikaw magiging bagong endorser ngayon ng Orice pa dahil dyan. Promise ko sa inyo, may complimentary care pack na ipapadala po sa bahay po ninyo ni Cheryl Quintana dahil dyan. Pero ngayon, sabi ni Carlos Barrera, dapat may promo na yung Orice pa sa Lazada ngayon. Okay? Dapat may promo ngayon dyan. Wag sa ibang platform kundi sa Lazada na yung pupunta ngayon. So, yun lang, ma'am. Thank you so much for enlightening us. And I hope people were able to see really the link of being able to build a strong product name, and then when you're able to IP it, especially when you bring it to a larger scale, whether locally or internationally, it's properly protected. So again, maraming salamat, ASEC, Mary Jean Pacheco of DTI. Talking about DTI, I want to talk to a former USEC as well of the DTI, who's a very good friend of mine, Miss Carissa Cruz. Evangelista Carissa, are you here right now with us? I want to make sure if you can have two screens with me and where I can see Carissa as well. So Carissa, really, really great, no? And what I love about Carissa is that, with all the learnings that she had gained from working together, working in DTI, was able to put up fashion. Carissa, tell us as well, I mean, in the fashion industry, how you were able to, I guess, understand how to use IP to grow and to scale the business for IP in the Philippines. You've seen the potential for our fashion, not just here, but abroad. But it's also a very, a delicate minefield, I would say, especially when bringing things like fashion, which are, a lot of it is yamang isip pagdating sa fashion, di ba? And you have to make sure to protect it. What are your own experiences in using IP in growing the fashion industry, not just here in the Philippines, but abroad?
Hi, RJ. I'd like to also say hello to Secretary Mon Lopez, and also to the other members and the directors and officers of the Intellectual Property Office, and to Yusek Fita Aldaba, Bless Lantayona, and to all our panel members here. And congratulations also to the great presentation of the e-commerce queen, Miss Mary Jane Pacheco. So I've known her from the beginnings of her career, also from SITEM. So your question regarding how important IP is, definitely it's one of the most important ways for growth of SMEs. I apologize first for my screen because I'm having some technical problems. You can probably see my face instead as on screen. So the issue is that when we I decided to have our brand Beatrice and it was launched in Saitem maybe like 6 years ago, and then we started our journey to be able to sell in trade shows abroad. The experience we had with trade shows abroad was that it was a chance that we'd be able to grow our business internationally and get to um, carry the Philippine banner using uh, our talents and our products available here in the Philippines. So it's a way to grow. There are different ways to grow. So there's your local growth. So there are brands that do that here, and then there's also brands that choose to try to do growth abroad, like our brand, Amina Aranas's brand. Let's say, because I am from the field of fashion, we also have other brands who have made it abroad. But we're in stores such as the Museum of Modern Art. We were in the Pompidou Museum in Paris, and Takashimaya. To get to that stage where you'd be able to be recognized for your design, you also need to invest in trademarking your brand. So that's where there is a huge growth opportunity for SMEs. Given that, if we would be looking at the uh, the the market now, we're in, there's a lot of stores that are closing worldwide. In England, Boohoo had bought Debenhams, only their IP and their website for $75 million, and not their 130 stores. They also bought Dorothy Perkins. ASOS is in talks with Topshop, Topman, Miss Selfridges, and that would only be for the IP and the website, but not the brick and mortar stores. So we see a big shift now in the growth of e-commerce. So what happened was with this pandemic, we see growth of e-commerce worldwide, and we're forced into it because of all these lockdowns. So if we look at U.S. numbers, there's an incredible 40.3% growth, which was the highest annual U.S. e-commerce growth in 2 decades. So it grew to 839 billion. And online sales in the US would account for 21% of retail sales. So, but if you would compare that to brick and mortar retail chains, they're down by 76.8%. And Amazon sales are up by one third of all US e-commerce growth. So you can see the impact of what COVID has done to us is that it hastened this cycle of optimization, of making things efficient. And instead of having retail chains grow just by having more and more brick and mortar stores, they're shifting to e-commerce. And with e-commerce also, there's the rise of like the direct to the consumer. With me, I was affected because of I do trade shows. So 80% of my business would be trade shows abroad. Last year, I had no trade show. So that's 80% of my business. So I have to concentrate on something local. And for the people who are doing local businesses, if we look at SM or we would look at the other retail chains, they're trying to figure out their pivot also by going online. We're very blessed today to have a speaker from Lazada who can talk to us about how their business has been growing. So there are also growth opportunities in times of adversity. But what I'd like to point out would be Lazada and other e-commerce players should also help IPO with the threat of counterfeits. Because if we're going to be looking at brands like Glossier, okay, so that's for makeup. Okay, for those that will like makeup here, there's like a global trade of counterfeits now, wherein it accounts for almost $500 billion worldwide. And with Facebook selling, there's also fake sites that are charging cards of people that are buying. So with that, I'm so sorry, Director General, and to everyone in the IPO office, there's actually more work. So it's no longer just traditional, and we have to grow with the times. But again, on the flip side, aside from the more policing, there's also going to be more business. So there could be more direct to consumer, like for fashion, for music, for books, there's online streaming. But we need to make sure that there's an IP protection budget for companies that are bigger and for SMEs like me who are smaller. So like when we consider our growth for SMEs, hindi naman palaging nagiging priority yung IP eh. Yung nagiging priority yung pagbayad mo sa tao. Tapos yung pagpasok mo sa, if ever for me, sa trade show or sa iba, yung pagpasok ng kapital nila sa produkto para mabenta o kaya paghanap ng ibang mga customer. But now with e-commerce on the rise, we also have the threat of more counterfeiting. And we need to have an IP protection budget, both for smaller and bigger brands. So just to talk about the growth again, would you believe that there's actually IPOs going on right now in Europe during the pandemic? I mean, that's something that for me, I couldn't even consider that being locked down at home. Okay, but there's IPOs with in the space of e-commerce or e-commerce platforms, something like a Net-a-Porter, like mythrees.com, Poshmark for retail selling, ThreadUp, online payment systems companies. So you can see that there's a growth, not just with a huge belief and hope in e-commerce, but that should be that should have a check and balance, not just with online selling stores and brick and mortar stores, because eventually we all hope mawawala na to, diba? We'll all be vaccinated, we'll all be okay. But there's going to always be a proliferation of unauthorized sellers. Before it was on the street, now you can find them on Instagram, on Facebook, and on other sites. So companies should try to make it a point to register their IP. In looking at our industry again, so going back to us, there was an inquiry of Congress into counterfeit textiles, and so the IPO office, they participated in that, and also the NDOST for PTRI, that would be the Philippine Textile Research Institute. So the result there was actually, nung nag-usap-usap na lahat, they found out that there had to be amendments in the law. It would be difficult to prevent that kind of counterfeiting of our indigenous textiles, and there should be a lead agency taking care of that, and that would be working with NCIP and NCCA. So if we end up looking at our core, because there's two things I talked about. There would be the importance of having your own name and your own brand, and also having that association of like soft power or culture with your brand in the Philippines. So to do that, we need to. Are you familiar with K-drama and K-pop and?
Si President Che is familiar with K-pop and K-drama po. Pati si Director Barba.
Director Barba. Okay. So there's this thing about soft power. Okay. So ang nagiging popular talaga ang mga Korean products because ine-endorse din dun sa mga TV shows nila eh. Diba? Like you'll end up seeing Crash Landing on You, and then pretty soon there's going to be a Korean product that's there. And then if you end up seeing it on an e-tail site, or you'll see it in a brick and mortar store in another country, you'll say, "Oy, ang ganda naman ng skin ni Captain Ree." So So somehow maybe that will influence you to buy and want you to know more about the Korean culture and Korean food. So there should be this integrated approach to with the creative economy in terms of our content in selling our country. So maybe that's something that the IPO
That we can
office,
consider as well. Yes, right.
yes, and the DTI can also consider. I think they're USEC FITA is working with the creative economy as part of the Achieve Council in with Congress, and also all the other agencies working under SecMon. Thanks SecMon for all the love for the creative industry. So I'm not just here as someone from fashion, but someone who's a staunch supporter of the creative industry, and we're very grateful for all the help that you've given. But we need to take a look at one, how to take care of our IP for our creative economy. Two, how to prevent online piracy and online counterfeiting. And then three, to be able to give us incentives in some way or help, like, so we can be able to grow our industries because they're all in the infancy stage. So you can see from my picture, nawala yung mukha ko, but nandun yung Philippine fashion. It's a sunrise industry. So the creative industry and fashion, it's a sunrise industry. So we need the protection. Okay, going back to my roots in fashion. Do I still have time?
Well, actually, if you will, can you come back to that? Is that okay, Carissa? If you don't mind,
Sure.
so we
Okay,
can give the other
okay.
some airtime for the other
Okay.
speakers here. So,
Maybe
but thanks so much.
Last point, and then I'll.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. One would be, okay, just to show you how important it is to have intellectual property. Looping it back to fashion, because that's why I was invited here. The example of Cesar Gaupo, okay, which is like the example of what happened to him was that he had a partner in Hong Kong, and his name was being used. His name was trademarked and used for probable business that they could do in Asia. So he couldn't use his name outside of the Philippines. So he was relegated to not being able to grow his business outside because it was not copyrighted by himself. So maybe we could take a look at like what is like when you sing and then there's something that's original. So it's something like original work. Maybe we can look at other kinds of ways of registration with the IPO office as we end up growing. If there's weak protection for your IP in fashion or in any other area, there's going to be difficulty for growth. I think, what's the shoes in Sex in the City? Do you remember? Can someone help me out? Because I can't remember.
I think, Director Barba, do you know the shoes in Sex in the City? Is that your expertise also? Baka kung hindi, siya, do you know shoes? I'm not so familiar.
That's my last point.
I think that's Louboutin.
Wow, Louboutin.
Galing talaga. Sabi ko, Director Barba nga. Di po. Jimmy Choo.
Jimmy Choo.
Ayan. Thank you so much, Nihet De Leon.
Thank you. Okay. So it's the story of Cesar Gaupo is the same like Jimmy Choo. So here's this guy, Jimmy Choo, who's a great shoemaker based out of London, and he partnered with Tamala Melon, who was great with PR, and they put shoes on people in the Academy Award. So he partnered with someone, but that Tamala Melon ended up owning his name, Jimmy Choo, worldwide. So at the end of the day, when they broke up, because like partnerships are like marriages, so you really have to get along with your business partner. What happened was he didn't have the right to use his name anymore because he didn't own the intellectual property for that, and he was able only to keep his name to have a small shop under in London. That's it. One small shop, so he could still continue making shoes. So if you're going to end up looking at that type of model for a business, so locally we have Cesar Gaupo, internationally we have Jimmy Choo. That shows how important it is to have intellectual property and register. So with that, I will give the floor back to you, Sir
Thanks,
RJ.
thanks very much, Carissa. That's great. It's a great cautionary tale for many of us as to why IP is important, and we need the why we need some government support and incentives, especially as we bring brands abroad. And later on, I guess with the threat of counterfeit and these threats of other products flooding online, our friend from Lazada, Carlos, will discuss a bit more later on. I guess how they're also making sure that our IPs are protected, or at least when they approach the e-commerce space, I'm sure they've got some best practices, not just from the Philippines, but there are global examples for Lazada. So again, thanks so much, Carissa. Moving on to Cheryl of the Philippine Franchise Association. I know that you also have a very interesting story, She, when it comes to the importance of IP. And you know, we had a really great interview about, you know, how when she was bringing her brand abroad, IP became a sticking point actually for Oraispa. Cheryl, can you please tell us a bit more how important it is that IP is protected even from the very start of the MSME, so that when you grow it, it's not something that you do at the back burner, but rather something that becomes as part of your, you know, as part of the integral strategy in growing the brand, not something you think about later on.
Correct, correct. You're right, RJ, because I resonate with what you shared earlier with your book, and as well as thanks to ASEC Jean, and of course to Carissa for providing the context, no, to the discussion. As we all know, the intellectual property is the fuel of the 21st century. And we probably may have been late, you know, in transformation, in how we transmogrified our industries. But the pandemic last year actually has been a catalyst for what is essential. And you are correct with saying that it is the integral part. In fact, as I've always advocated with our mentees, thanks to Secretary Ramon Lopez for providing KMME as a platform for mentorship, no, for exchanges between mentors and mentees, and has
just to clarify, di ba, just so people know, that's the Kapatid Mentor Me, KMME is Kapatid Mentor Me program. Yan lang, para people who are not familiar. And mga go-negosyo, usually kami mga mentor, we participate where the big brother helps the small brother. Parang ganyan.
Alam na yan, RJ, kasi protected ng intellectual property ang KMME. Pagka ikaw ay MSME sa Pilipinas, siguradong alam mo yan, yung program na yan. Oo. So, ang sinasabi lang natin dito, kahit nung ako nagsisimula with Oraispa, kasi 20 years na akong nagnenegosyo, RJ, no? But Oraispa is only 10 years old. Before Oraispa, ang business namin is manufacturing. So wala masyadong branding doon sa unang component ng business ko. At nung nag-start kami ng Oraispa, malaking tulong na during that programs, no, sessions with DTI, local DTI, kaya ang ROG ang laki ng intervention in implementation or execution ng intellectual property sa Pilipinas. Nandoon yung personnel from IPO, so nakapag-rehistro kaagad kami. Alam mo, Oraispa, we had it 2008, but we only launched in 2010 because we waited for all our protection, no, our clauses, the patents for the technology that we're using, kasi nga, we're the pioneer in using rice bran for personal care in the country. So, nevertheless, ang sinasabi natin dito, yung integral part, siya yung first step. Okay, ang tanong sa atin nga is, paano gagamitin ng mga SMEs or MSMEs yung IP assets nila, intellectual property assets nila, para magkaroon sila ng stronger, more competitive and resilient businesses. Back to basics, which is brand building. Even at the height of the pandemic, those who were able to put extra mile, extra effort in building their brands through the years, have that top mind. Yes, may recall siya during the time of the pandemic. In fact, you know, RJ, we closed March last year, but after 2 weeks, we had to start servicing our clients kasi naghahanap na sila ng produkto namin. So, we were very lucky, shinare kanina ni ASEC Jean, we're in different online platforms even before the pandemic, even if we were running brick and mortar stores. So what am I saying with intellectual property as an asset? Yun minsan kasi ang nakakalimutan, no? Iba lalapit sa akin, for example, Meti, ma'am, paano ba ako magpa-franchise? Protected ba yung iyong brand? Okay, franchising is a model to replicate a successful business. A successful business should start with protecting your assets. And what is your asset? Your brand. So brand building activity, how do you earn from that? You always have to transform your brand building activities to brand equity. Yung brand equity po, ito yung value ng brand mo sa market. Yung emotional association ng mga binibentahan mo sa produkto mo. Papaano sila nare-relieve nung produkto mo, papaano sila sumasaya dun sa product mo. So, the pandemic, RJ, have shown us that the intellectual property assets is not just the name, it's not just the trademark, but the holistic approach of the brand in terms of how extra mile of service you're willing for your customers. Yung sinasabi kanina nila Miss Carissa, no, yung nagkakaroon ng mga problems. In fact, when we take a look at the opportunities with us in building our homegrown brands, napakarami. Kaya last year nga, even while we are, stuck at home, yung mga anak ko, may kanya-kanya mga projects. Nag-register kami online, www.ipopil.gov.h. May 5 kami na brands na register. Because I was telling them, even last year, June, I launched the book, tulad mo kasi idol kita, RJ eh. So, ito, 2018 pa yata nakarehistro na sa Ipofil, yung Yes, the Filipino Brand Can. Title siya ng book, but I was thinking of, it might be a movement, it might be an advocacy that others can embrace. So, I had it protected, but launched the book 2 years later, which is at the height of the pandemic. Because nakita ko din na ang homegrown brands pala, sila yung nandiyan dyan at the height of lockdowns. Mobility, sobra tayong restricted. We can only shop in our immediate township, some in the villages, di ba? Hindi ka pwedeng lumabas ng barangay mo. That taught us that the homegrown brands, yung mga local brands natin, will always be there for you at that moment. Pag hindi yan, in-embrace ng local MSMEs natin yung opportunity na yan, they will miss it. Okay, lastly, since I would like to talk to our MSMEs, yung mga viewers natin and participants, brand building is realized by small steps, but is no small thing. So laging yun yung tatandaan natin that our customers at this moment, at the height of our challenges, no, the pandemic has become a disruptive or a stressor, a huge stressor that actually is an opportunity, a catalyst for us to do the things that we should have done many years ago. Brand building also translate to realizing that our customers now wants instant gratification, value for money, safety. So dapat safe sila when they use your products. And of course, yung customer satisfaction nyo going extra mile. You know, our people before social media strategies yung sumasagot. Ngayon kahit ating gabi ka mag-message sa page or sa website, someone will answer you because gitel yung mga staff no sa sales because we can see how competition has become more imminent for you and how your brand equity should stand out and taking seriously the feedbacks of your customer. So how do we do that? Para din pong tao, dapat concise ka and clear in communicating your brand to the market. That is probably the singular major realization ko as an entrepreneur, RJ. Kasi when before Arise pa, parang chop suey, yung lahat ng ginagawa namin, halo-halo, Kasi nga, walang brand building activity prior to that. Basta makapag-service ng customer, makapag-deliver ng products. Now with the Rise By, it has to be clear. How do you relate, even with the new projects that we had, because the pandemic also made us realize, no, as entrepreneurs, ako personally, my family has embarked on new projects at the height of the pandemic because we wanted to be able to be responsive to the needs of your customer. So that's my set worth advice to our MSMEs. No, brand building activity, translate it to your brand equity. Basics talaga siya. Even pandemic or not pandemic, it's the same thing. Mas mabilis lang tayo ngayon dapat mag-respond.
That's right. And that's actually what e-commerce gives us, that speed to be able to respond. Because just to summarize what President Che was talking about, no, was the idea that brand building is nakikilala pa yung pangalan ninyo. Eh, diba, kung nakikilala dahil you build a strong relationship with your customer, that's actually of value, diba? And when that becomes of value, you have to IP that one. You have to own the value that you put into building your brand, yung inyong yamang isip. Kasi eventually, when you start marketing it outside, hahanapin yung produkto mo and may value yung pangalan ng produkto mo. That's what you want to make sure of, especially pag ikaw ay papasok na sa larangan ng e-commerce at maraming mag-order na sa inyo, baka hahanap ng produkto because may pangalan na build mo yung brand ninyo. Again, maraming salamat, Ms. Cheryl Quintana. Now, moving on to my good friend, Carlos Otermin Barrera of Lazada. Carlos, again, thanks so much for joining us. I saved the best for last because we're talking about e-commerce, Carlos. So really, Lazada's one of the giants of e-commerce here in the Philippines. And of course, you've seen as well how you've been able to help grow small brands who have been placed on your platform. The micro, small, and medium enterprises here in the Philippines have placed brands on your platform. They've grown immensely. How has e-commerce helped them grow their business? But at the same time, as raised by Carissa, how is also Lazada helping protect the rights of these small MSMEs so that when they're there, they are not counterfeited or their rights to their product, to their intellectual property are protected when they go on digital commerce? Carlos, please go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. It's a great session, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you. Thanks again to the organizers and to all our partners, of course, DTI, and this is a critical piece for our business. I'm so glad to hear the direction, right, and the things that you are all mentioning, because over the past few years, we've really made an effort to share how intellectual property protection is not about large firms, all these big conglomerates, or only these huge enterprises, multinationals. It's really about every single one. It's about medium and small sized businesses, right? Everyone needs to be invested and think about protecting their IP, no matter how big or small you are, right? There's a huge evidence that SMEs, especially that apply for trademarks and for designs, end up growing faster, right? They become more successful, they're more engaged, and they understand their assets and how to grow their business. So definitely for e-commerce, this is a very important area and very contentious, right? We've learned a lot, especially we've learned from Alibaba Group. One of the best things that we've done is applying their same rules and regulations. As part of Alibaba Group, we've been very committed to protecting intellectual property rights. And we think that e-commerce needs to be an environment where intellectual property rights are respected, right? We take it very seriously. And in fact, what we do to support IPR protection is we use a lot of technology. We're constantly scrapping the site using technologies to identify counterfeit goods, fake items. We're identifying through technology real time all these things and constantly deactivating thousands and thousands of items every day. Our team is also engaging very actively with brands and sellers, right? I believe this is not just something you need to do in an automated manner. This is also about educating and working together with all the partners, having sustainable solutions for them to flag, right? So what we do today is we have an intellectual property portal where all brand owners can flag infringements or can flag that someone is using their brand, right? So it's really a shared responsibility, but we definitely take it very seriously. I think also in general, in order to be competitive during a time like this, it's very important to invest aggressively, right?
Mm-hmm. Carlos, just a Carlos, are you there? Sorry, your video. Did you go on video or? I'm not sure if Carlos was disappeared a bit, but again, Carlos, if you can hear me right now, there. Sorry,
There, sorry,
you,
maybe
dis-
a second.
you
Can you-
disappeared there for a bit. Carlos, just a question: when they go to the intellectual property portal, is it important for them to, or did you ask them, have you applied for your IP for your product? Because some people, they might complain online and they say, hi, yeah, somebody's copying my product. Then you ask them, "Oh, do you have an IP for that one?" Then they might say no. So that becomes unfortunate, right? So how do you help these other brands that go there, then they complain that they're being infringed upon in Lazada?
Yes. Yeah, so definitely what we do is it goes both ways, right? First, we encourage all our sellers to register. We've been educating them a lot on the importance of having their brand, right? Because it's very hard to exercise your rights, and it's very hard to complain about how someone is copying you if you haven't trademarked, right? We've even subsidized some of them to do this. We've helped them, and we've had discussions and said, look, we can help you with this. We've even paid for some of their applications, right? But after that, what's important is that this is a portal available for everyone, right? So whenever they reach out, we send the link to the portal. We also highlight this everywhere on our site. We share it in all our communications so they can do it on their own, right? Of course, we're willing to help and we're always willing to share. But our approach is always make it on a sustainable solution so they can submit. And within 24 hours, they will get their feedback, right?
Well, thanks so much, Carlos. And also from that one, any tips for the small brands who want to go, let's say that, how can, if they're in Lazada Philippines and they want to scale their business outside of the country, how can Lazada also help them, especially if they got a strong IP? Because we're saying, e-commerce is key to your growth, especially with IP strategy. What have you seen have been success strategies for MSME brands from the Philippines to grow abroad using e-commerce with a very strong with IP strategy behind them?
Yes. Thanks for that question. Actually, I really see, like I was mentioning earlier, we see IP as the core of the business because it's such an important asset. And it's really the heart, right? You can build so much around it, especially for online. You know this, right? You have registered all your businesses. It really creates such a personal connection, right? It makes the company grow much faster because that's what you're constantly showing and what you're consistently sharing with your customers, right? So over the course of the last year, we saw millions of Filipinos making this transition, right? We have hundreds of thousands of MSMEs, and we consistently see that the ones that are serious about IP, the ones that focus not just on selling and discounts, but building a brand, delighting their customers, having very strong social media presence, having very clear branding, even running a lot of entertainment activities like live streams, games, messaging their customers, constantly exercising that IP and communicating, right? Even delivering the items with a badge, with the same banner, with the same brand, with the sticker, right? And really understanding the path to purchase of their customers. Those really do much better, right? I think what's critical here is consistency. They need to approach e-commerce not just as a different channel, right? But the same way that they do offline, right? The principles, the customer are the same. The foundation of the business is the same. It's all a matter of building a consistent brand and creating unique customer experience. For example, when we look at the touch points that you have from an e-commerce perspective, the market is really big. People were mentioning earlier, there are millions and millions of customers every day, right? But the foundation is the same. When someone is messaging you, when someone is entering your store, it's the same that when it's offline, right? You always message, you reply, you give options, you show your brand, you build a nice store where you showcase your brand, your logo in every item. And as more and more people rely on e-commerce, they build a more emotional connection. It's very important to also invest on these digital channels, right? The same way that they do offline, and constantly make the brand the highlight of this. Especially if you're an MSME, right? You want people to remember you for your brand, for your principles, for your values and your aspirations. And what we are seeing is that, particularly this year, our Love Local campaigns, our MSMEs are doing much, much better. People are, I would say, voting for their wallet, right? They're willing to spend to support their partners,
Local brands,
local businesses. And we've been even running a lot of our last mall brands, for example. We have a dedicated campaign only for local brands, local sellers. And people are spending much more during those days because they also see it as, nation building, really supporting the brands that are making a difference for the country.
And I like what you're saying is tying back also to what Cheryl was saying earlier on the importance of the brand building.
Yes.
So when you go on e-commerce, when you do all the different promotions that you use or distribution channels online, what is key is that you tie it up to building your brand also online. And if you want to build your brand online, make sure that you secure your IP behind your brand here online at the same time. Thanks so much, Carlos, for enlightening us. It's actually a whole ecosystem. The IP, going digital commerce, and brand building, all those things must go together. And I hope you don't mind that there's a very interesting story that I want to go. There are people listening here right now who are sending us in questions about IP enforcement and all those different rules. Director Ichi is actually here. No? Director Ichi, you can actually take a look at the Facebook comment page if you can take a look, or some people from the IPOFIL to see. There's some questions that are not addressed in this portion of the panel because we're talking about SME and IP strategy together. So if you've got questions about enforcement, they might be taken up in the second part of the panel, or our representatives from IPOFIL can also answer those different questions. Please, you can put that in the chat box right now as well. And as I circle back, not too much time for questions here, but for Big One, I want to showcase one thing which President Che was not able to bring up earlier on. But President Che, can you share with us, Director Rowell showcased you as an example of the importance of IP, especially when you went to China. Can you please share with us that example that you discussed with Director Rowell Barba when Auraispa actually went to China and you encountered some IP issues for yourself, and how did you resolve it with the help of IPOFIL?
Sinisecret ko na yan, RJ eh. That joke. to put a light moment to our experiences in the past. But before I move on to that, I'd like to nail also what Carlos was sharing, because as he was sharing the importance of brand building to e-commerce. Your website, your presence in Lazada or any other online platforms is a tool for you. It's not a brand building. Your presence there does not mean that you have built your brand already. So it's a tool for you to be able to reach out more. But still, like, people will go to the platforms and look for your brand. So there should be a brand recall, not the other way around, that like Lazada will be the one to build your brand for you. Okay, so moving on to what you were sharing, RJ, what we have been discussing before, the CIIE, the China Import International Exhibition, and this was held 2019, I think, 2018, because they were trying to see how other countries will be able to export papasok sa China instead of China just exporting their brands. And it is a huge potential for all of us, especially Filipino brands, to be able to reach out to the Chinese market. So there we go. There we went when at the first CIIE, and we were really starstruck how they held the huge event. Now, when I was there, I was already negotiating with interested parties, particularly for Auraispa. And as we were searching, someone registered our trademark there, but the thing is, so naubos yung maghapon namin, no? Pag mabuti na doon sila Director Sen Perlada, sila Director Agnes to help me out, and then I was talking to our lawyers here back in Manila how we're going to move forward to the negotiation. The good thing is this: even if others were able to register your trademark in a particular territory, pero meron kasi ang IPO na Declaration of Actual Use. So those who were able to market your products, were able to sell it, use it, your trademark, still has the upper hand. So we're able to trash it out after I went back to Manila that day. So problem solved naman siya with the help of our government and our lawyers here. And also our counterpart there, our commercial attaché office in China. So that's lesson learned for us, because ganito kasi siya, RJ, yung pagkakamali namin na yon, it was not a priority market for us at the onset. Dahil nagtitipid yung team, Yung mga checklist namin, syempre kasi yung mga nasa Madrid Protocol, yun lang yung priority namin. Tapos, dahil magastos, mamimili lang kami kung saan kami may access right away. So, yun ang lesson learned sa mga ibang mga MSMEs na dapat mauna kang gamitin yung trademark mo, i-register mo siya, mag-project ka kung saan mo dadalhin yung produkto mo. And lastly, and lastly, meron akong nabasa na libro. Ang sabi doon ay ang ideas, katulad ng binabanggit kanina ni Asik Jean, ang ganda ng sinasabi niya about innovation and invention Kasi marami sa mga idea at produkto ngayon, hindi original, kundi in-innovate natin. Meron siyang seed na in-invent ng iba, pero in-innovate mo siya. The innovation is your problem-solving skills now as an entrepreneur. Yung ideas daw, marami ang binivisit na tao at the same time. So you envision the idea is, entering your consciousness, sabay-sabayan ibang tao. Those who were able to quickly respond to the idea and transform it to a reality, and first and foremost, register it by protecting it in the IPO, wins to have the right to that idea as a provision. So
that's right. Like you said, innovation is actually it's invention plus commercialization. So you have to make sure that you even if you create a new product, create a new idea, if you don't commercialize it and if you don't IP it, you're not going to be able to reap the benefits of your innovation in the first place, diba? And like you said, Director Ichi is here right now, and I hope she thinks that I did a good job listening to her yesterday. But the idea is that if your strategy is to go abroad, you do have to spend some money to make sure you protect your IP, even going abroad. And if you've got questions about the process of applying for your intellectual property, about trademark, about or copyright, or any of these other questions, I urge you, please put those questions right now. There's Director Ichi. Director Ichi, hi over there. Thank you so much for joining us. If you've got more questions which are process-related or about your IP, please put those questions in the chat box. You can be answered directly by the IP. But just in case, Director Ichi, can I just give you a few words? Where can they go if they have questions about IPOFIL and other things about trademark? Can you just share with us a few words lang where they can go if they've got questions about the process or what they can patent?
Thank you, RJ. Actually, our whole team, I believe, is here. The entire executive committee is here. So a lot of IPOFIL experts can assist the MSMEs. But for those who have queries right now, they can dial our hotline, 7238-6300. That's 7238-6300. Our agents are on standby for your queries. And the questions that you have posted on Facebook, I understand are being collected by our CMO, the Communications Marketing Office, and they will be responding to you in due time via email. And for any other queries, you can always go to our website. We do have the chatbot facility. When you go into our website, there will be that box at the lower right hand that will appear. It's a chat bot where you can type in your questions and you can get responses there. We have people on standby also for that. And for any other queries, general queries regarding IP, you can always send an email to ask@ipofil.gov.ph. That's ask at ipopphil.gov.ph. Thank you very much,
Okay.
RJ.
Maraming salamat, Director Ichi. Thanks so much for enlightening all of us over here. And just moving back to our panel, we really don't have much time left, but then can I just have some closing words? Any tips again for our MSMEs who want to engage and grow their market, especially using IP as a strategy? ASEC, Jean Pacheco, any last words, please, for all of our listeners here today?
Yeah, I thank you, RJ. I think the best advice that I can give the SMEs is that government is here to help you, and all you need to do is to really approach your government agency involved, and this time it's Intellectual Property of the Philippines. When we said in the tagline, it says "Basta e-commerce madali." The speed there is also in the commitment of us to address the services with speed. And I will take, I think, DG Roel Barba and the team of IPO is really doing their best to make sure that when you talk to them and you call them and when you ask a question, that it will be given to you in very, very swiftly. So government is here to help you and to provide the environment so that you can all also protect your brand. So that's it for me.
Isaac Pacheco, just in case they need to get in touch with the government naman with any type of registration, where can they approach, especially if you're an MSME? Who can they talk to in the DTI?
Okay, please go, ayan, and the regional operations was mentioned earlier. Please go to your nearest DTI office. We are in 81 provinces and 16 regions, but of course, going online is the best. So you can certainly go to the DTI website. Even we do have our own call center, 1384. There is also, we also respond to queries posted in Facebook. So we are using all channels as well. Just drop us a line. Malasakit Center, that DTI call center, Facebook page. We have a DTI YouTube channel as well, and of course the website, which is the dti.gov.ph.
Okay, maraming salamat, Isaac Pacheco. Thank you so much for your time. Miss Carissa Evangelista, Carissa Cruz Evangelista, any words and tips, especially for those in the same creative industry as you, and also who want to go global with their market, about the importance of the IP strategy, at the same time how to properly leverage e-commerce to their benefit? Carissa.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to petition with the IPO office, if ever we could ask for an express lane for IP registration for MSMEs and the indigenous communities, as well as our fashion community. That would be great. I think this is the right venue because all the offices are here. Thank you, DG Roel.
Si Director Barba was nodding his head, so hopefully okay yan. Nag-wave na siya sa'yo, Carissa. So okay na yan.
Salamat. Nako, hindi lang guwapo ang bait pa. Thank you po. And then working with our freelance designers, kasi may mga issues din kami dyan. Alam ko maraming magagaling na lawyer din dito. Thank you po. So in terms of advice to the companies that are here, take it one day at a time, because sometimes when things get very difficult, we end up discouraged. So this is just a cycle. This is the biggest black swan event of our lifetime right now for the ones that haven't lived through World War I and World War II. But with crisis also comes opportunity, and we can see from the figures that I mentioned earlier, there's an explosive growth worldwide in terms of e-commerce. So take it that way. It's a way for our Filipino brands to be sold more locally, and also for our Filipino brands and services to be able to go direct to consumer abroad. But what's key is to protect our intellectual property and make sure that we take care of our avenues, all the avenues where we can sell. That would be in terms of, for the creative industry, that would be music through paid subscription, through movies, through animation and digital art, through fashion, through book publishing and writing. So the world is our oyster. We'll think of it that way. Let's shift. Maybe we don't have the stores here now, but then we have the whole world in front of us. I'd like to leave again with a cautionary tale. Okay. We had one earlier from Jimmy Choo, and there's another tale of for those that are the hip people here, like Sir Roel. We have and Miss Ichi. We have there's a brand called Supreme that's very popular with the millennials. There was actually a store in China of a fake Supreme, and it was like a huge store. It was closed because Supreme just registered their name there last year.
Wow.
Yeah. So
really big thing.
yeah. So the counterfeiter had enough gal to set up a huge store, and then there's that support of the industry there that they don't care. So we need to have this support also from the buyers, that they would like to buy the original Cordillera weaves, even if it's cheaper to buy the copies, because you're going to be supporting like the Filipino SME. So we're at the point right now where we need to be stronger. So it's domestic strength. That's where we're coming from right now. So
Okay.
in my past, I came from domestic operations. So I believe domestic strength going out, please. Okay? Diba,
Thank you so
Cheryl?
much,
Kailangan
Carissa.
magbenta pa tayo.
Carissa, just in case people, in fact, we have people listening here right now who want to be part of the Fashion Design Coalition, how do they get in touch with you?
With
Or with
us,
the coalition?
they can check us on Instagram. That's the Philippine Fashion Coalition, and then we'll have we can get volunteers and also members there. And then
Okay,
yeah,
maraming salamat. Carissa Cruz Evangelista, I'm sure yung puso mo pa rin ay nasa DTI. So maraming salamat again, Miss Carissa Cruz Evangelista. Moving on to Miss President Cheryl Quintana of the Philippine Franchise Association. I know that we're also helping bringing our IP of our franchised ideas abroad. No, can you please share with some people here right now? I know you shared a lot of advice, but also for those considering to, I guess, help, they want to franchise their business. How can IP help them, protect their business and also bring it abroad?
Yes. So now, Yuse Carissa has a local cautionary tale, no, added with Orispa's experience in CIIE. And with that, RJ, I'm very grateful with IPOFIL, with Director Ruel, the rest of DTI, of course, who have helped us and really made us realize that intellectual property is the core of what you are doing. So the pandemic has become an effective disruption, a stressor to all of us. And in fact, if we see it positively, a catalyst to review how we adapt to the new world order. We align our companies with the sustainable development goals without forgetting that we are in the borderless world. Hindi pwedeng bawal magpapasok ng iba dito or bawal tayong lumabas. So we are already an integrated market. So especially with e-commerce, you can reach out the far-flung areas from where you are, and you can service customers from miles away from where you are servicing from. So in the franchising and retail alone, there has a massive wave of pivots and repurposing, retooling that we've seen in the industry, in the sector last year, as everybody was forced to adapt quickly as your innovation strategy to be able to survive the pandemic. In the franchising industry, we have seen a lot of those in the service sector, for example, spa and salon and hotels, actually providing their services to their customers safely at their homes, providing those they missed in going to these service-oriented businesses. If you forget that, then makakalimutan ka ng iyong customers. So you have to adapt. We also have retail businesses now offering services, delivery services for their customers. Brick and mortar stores now have to realize that there is an omni-channel. Even if you want to operate your brick and mortar stores, you really have to engage your customers in different platforms, not just the online selling platform, but all your social media presence. Also, we have realized that homegrown brands now have more imminent time to shine. Yan. This is our time to shine. Pagalingan po ito sa mga MSMEs na Filipinos, Filipino brands. Kapag nakalimutan natin yan, mawawala tayo sa top of mind recall ng customers. Franchise Asia, for example, for PFA has also pivoted. We have gone virtual, RJ. You've part of that. You've seen it last year because you're a member also of PFA. Last year, we have over 1,000 participants to the virtual conference. The Franchisee Summit, the first in the world, we have launched. We have over 3,000 participants. Sa face-to-face, ang kaya lang, for example, ng venue, maximum yan 800, 600 to 800. So I think what we experience now, even now here, we're doing the virtual conference, learning from one another. I don't think we're going back, na hindi integrated yung ganitong platform.
That's right. That's right.
In franchising, if you ask me, because a lot of people ask me, what are the top of mind franchises at this point in time? it's not a particular industry. Even, for example, mobile clinics in the health and wellness sector have become prominent, no, these days. And also F&B have ready to eat and ready to cook meals offered. You now have a cloud kitchen, RJ, you know that very well. There's a cloud kitchen now. So a lot of pivoting we can see. Even lending institutions have now a higher engagement with customers because probably of the gaps that the bank cannot address. So ngayon yung time na talaga makikita natin, no, with the intellectual property protection, daig ng maagap ang masipag. So because we are borderless, di ba, basic na basic
That's
talaga, right. Maagap ang masipag. So I'd like to just a parting statement to our viewers, especially MSMEs, always believe that yes, the Filipino brand can.
Yes, the Filipino brand can. Maraming salamat for the inspiration, President Che. And finally, rounding out things, really making a big wave over here for e-commerce, really pushing the e-commerce revolution here in the Philippines, our good friends from Lazada. Carlos, how would you like to round this out over here? And how can Lazada continue to support our MSMEs at the same time protect their IP strategies moving forward? What would you recommend so we can become truly global brands from Filipino brands?
Well, so I just want to highlight again the 2 or 3 things that we were discussing earlier, right? First, your brand is your heart, right? Build your brand. Brand is what's going to differentiate you from everyone else in the long term. Over the long term, your brand value is going to be even bigger than your asset value, especially now that as we are discussing, everything is switching into online, other touch points. People will recognize your brand. And it's easier to have a very strong brand identity to, grow your business, even if you don't have a lot of the backing or a lot of the infrastructure, because it's very visual and it's very emotional, right? Second, we completely support the work that all the stakeholders have been doing, IP protection, and all the relevant government agencies. We believe in public-private partnerships, and we want to collaborate, right? Because we acknowledge the concern. And we want to differentiate as an e-commerce platform. Lazada is all about trust. We can only build that trust if we have the brand trust, the seller trust, and we empower everyone, right, to really own their identity and to grow, no matter how big or how small you are, right? And I think lastly, I'm very happy with all the talking points that everyone has been sharing, right? Like, you need to take your brand seriously. Even when we look at the customer samples, the customer studies, people always think that price is very important. It's all about price. It's all about value. The reality is that that's only partially true. Brand recognition, trust, and experience are even better, right? When we look at e-commerce, out of the 3, 4 attributes that are critical, 2 are related to brand, right? So it's awareness and trust and connection, right? So I want to encourage everyone to continue investing in their brand, to continue growing, to take the online opportunity also to boost their brand. We are all trying to use the different channels. The world is very round, very global today. We're all looking at omni-channel. How can we do offline to online? How can we use on the channels?
And Carlos, having said that, how can they sign up for Lazada? How can our small MSME sign up for Lazada?
That was my closing. So that was my last message. And definitely, for any of you that's looking to take your brand to the next level, we want you to partner with Lazada. We want you to sign up. You can just go into Lazada using your app. When you click on your app, you will see sign up as a seller, or you can go into Lazada directly on the desktop. As soon as you enter Lazada, you will see a banner, sell on Lazada in the first screen. Very, very easy. It takes about 2 minutes. You can upload your pictures. It goes through verification and start selling. So really, really excited to see all these MSMEs growing. And this is our vision, right? As a company, we want to take businesses to the next level. We're in the business of building businesses, right? And we're very proud. We have hundreds of thousands of businesses, but we want everyone to go online, right? We hope to reach the 1 million+ companies in the Philippines and give them another channel to grow and to build their business.
Okay, gracias. Thank you so much, Carlos Barrera of Lazada. And again, thank you so much, ASEC, Jean Pacheco of DTI, Carissa Cruz Evangelista, formerly of DTI and right now heading the Fashion Design Coalition. And of course, thank you so much, Ms. Cheryl Quintana, President of the Philippine Franchise Association. Maraming salamat. If you've got more questions, please feel free to put in the chat box. I apologize to our next set of speakers. We just want to make sure that we gave good airtime to all our speakers here right now. But again, a virtual round of applause. Maraming salamat to all of our speakers for the first panel here this afternoon. And with that, mga kaibigan, we quickly move on to our next panel for the finale of our Intellectual Property Grand Forum. Ito po, bigatin po yung ating mga next speakers for this forum. This is an open discussion about programs for MSMEs to recover and sustain their businesses during this pandemic and moving towards this new normal situation. Here with us is none other than sorry about that one. I have to go to the earlier presentation. Pasensya na po. I'll go to the second panel here first before that one. Allow me to introduce the speakers for the second panel, talking about SMEs as the backbone of the global economy. As we know, in the Philippines, 99.6% of our businesses are our MSMEs. We have right now the Undersecretary of the Department of Trade and Industry. She heads the DTI Regional Operations Group in charge of the 16 regional offices and 81 provincial offices and the Bureau of Small Micro Enterprise Development. Please welcome here right now Undersecretary Bless Lantayona. Yusek Bless, how are you doing? Joining Yusek Bless on this panel is also a lawyer with a diverse experience in the fields of litigation, commercial law, international trade, and intellectual property. He joined the DTI as an Assistant Secretary for Industry Development and International Trade Policy in December 2018. Please welcome Assistant Secretary Alan Hepty. Joining our two dignitaries from the DTI, our other speaker with us today is Deputy Director General for Enforcement, External Relations and Policy of IPOFIL, who oversees the Documentation, Information and Technology Transfer Bureau, IP Academy, IP Enforcement Office, and Policy and International Affairs. Please welcome Deputy Director General Teodoro T. Pascua. Joining these fine people on the panel, this next speaker has done extensive research and consulting work globally with the World Health Organization, the United Nations Fund for Population Activities, UNICEF, and among others. As an entrepreneur, he is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Access Health Hospital and its subsidiaries. Please welcome here right now, currently the DTI Assistant Secretary of the Competitiveness and Innovation Group. We have Dr. Napoleon K. Juanillo Jr. Nako, what a powerhouse panel that we have over here. And our next one, the guest speaker, is the Philippines' staunchest export champion, advocate, and spokesperson. Starting as an exporter of marine products, he has assumed the role of President of the Confederation of Philippine Exporters and later on the Philippine Exporters Confederation, or PhilExport. Please welcome here on stage the Honorary Consul for the Consulate of Romania in the Philippines and PhilExport President Sergio Ortiz Luis Jr. Wow. And next one, we have another Undersecretary, a lawyer by profession. The Undersecretary of the Consumer Protection Group of the DTI has been keen on ensuring that the Philippines is at par in all areas of consumer protection vis-a-vis other countries in Asia and the Western world. Please welcome finally Department of Trade and Industry Undersecretary Ruth Castello. Okay, wow, what a big panel we have here this morning, rather this lunchtime. Can I start off with the first question, really, which I'd like to explore with all our different panelists here right now. And the first question we want to ask you is, what is the ideal type of landscape for MSMEs to drive innovation, creativity, and power economic recovery during this pandemic? So you've seen the experiences of different MSMEs, you've seen the best practices. How do you think the innovation will drive them to really improve during this time? How can they use this crisis as an opportunity? And let's also tie it back to IP. How can IP help them also drive innovation and their business during this time? Let's please welcome our first speaker to talk about that one, Yusek Bless Lantayona.
Yeah, thank you very much, RJ. I'm getting, a message, recurring message that my internet connection is so unstable. So just allow me to have my audio. Thank you very much. the MSME sector is really one of the hardest hit during the COVID-19. And to respond, to these challenges, our MSMEs should really need to be more resilient. And resilience, helps them in understanding how best to adapt to change and pivot according to the needs of the market. So on the other hand naman, itong resilience of the MSMEs also depends on the resilience of their ecosystems. It is therefore crucial for the government to encourage MSME resilience and create more inclusive and sustainable growth. Now, a number of these measures from the government are already embodied in the Bayanihan Acts 1 and 2. The interplay of the government interventions and the entrepreneurs' actions is necessary because the latter's ability to respond to the crisis has both short-term and long-term implications to the economy, especially in the areas of employment generation, wealth creation, competition, and growth. And at DTI, we have specific programs already that will enable MSMEs to work their way to recovery and survival in the new normal. So we have certain initiatives, that are designed to help improve the business climate and promote the ease of doing business. And you are very familiar with the negosyo centers that we have now, situated in the cities and municipalities. As of the moment, we have already 1,179 negosyo centers where the MSMEs can really go because they act as a first stop, one-stop shop for the MSMEs. We also have initiatives that help our MSMEs access financing. And for DTI, we have our financing arm, which is the SB Corporation. And right now, they are dispensing this COVID-19 assistance to restart enterprises. And I think many of our MSMEs who are here have already availed of this interest-free and maximum of 12-month grace period financing program. We also have initiatives that enhance management and labor capacities of our MSMEs. And we have programs such as, you are very familiar with this, the Kapatid Mentor Me program, the Youth Entrepreneurship program, and many more. We also have initiatives that would assist MSMEs in accessing technology and innovation. And we are currently on our, I think, 8 years in serving our MSME constituents with the shared services facility project and the fabrication laboratories. And of course, there is this program or initiative for our MSMEs to access wider markets. So we have the One Town, One Product next generation program, which is very popular among our MSME in the regions and in the provinces, as well as the Go Local program. Now, the capacity of an entrepreneur to survive, adapt, and grow during the unstable times is essential in this time of crisis. So therefore, really, government must help enhance this capacity among our MSMEs. So it is actually a collaboration between the entrepreneur himself with the help of the government. I think that is an ideal situation for them to really thrive during the very challenging times.
Yusek, can I just ask a question? Yusek, bless. There's other
Yes.
programs that you were mentioning earlier on, but where can they access all this information? Do they have to go to the negosyo center, since they're all trying to avoid right now leaving their house
Yes.
because of, especially here in Manila, because of
Yeah,
ECQ?
yes,
Where
of
can they go
course.
to find out more about the programs?
Of course, we have already this Negosyo Center online portal. With the help of our e-commerce office, we are in the process of, populating and really making this ready. We will be launching the Negosyo Center online portal next month. And depending on the quarantine status of the different regions and provinces, our regional and provincial offices are open. They are open. So probably on a skeletal workforce, they are open, but they are also present in the social media. They can be accessed. We have learned about that because the regional operations group is really the last mile delivery of the Department of Trade and Industry. There are programs that we have pivoted already online, but there are programs that cannot be delivered online. So we have adapted some online delivery of our programs, but really we are present in all of the regions and provinces, and many of our negosyo centers are still open. They are open to serve the public, but in case there is a very strict quarantine status in an area, they can be accessed via the different social media.
Ma'am, last question na lang po, Yusek Bless. If they need to access some financial assistance for the MSMEs, who can they approach? Who can they talk to already in the DTI? Who are the avenues that they can talk to?
Our SB Corporation, they have also certain offices in the regions, but we collaborated with our SB Corporation and our provincial offices and regional offices, and the negosyo centers are also inquiry point. Our negosyo centers, the business counselors, can assist them in applying for SB Corporation loan, and that is already application is via online.
Again, thank you so much, Yusek Bless, for all that information. We are very much guided by that one. I apologize, but we have to kind of compress the time, so I'll just reserve one question per resource panelist, if you don't mind. No. Moving on to our next one, I'd like to speak particularly to ASEC Alan Hepty. And Sir Alan actually is very familiar, of course, working with IPOPhil, no? Having come from IPOPhil as the Deputy Director General here before. And sir, as I talk to you right now about, how MSMEs can grow or need to, innovate and pivot during this time, you have a unique perspective actually as well when it comes to how IPs can, use IP to drive innovation, creativity, and power economic recovery. What is your unique perspective on what MSMEs can do right now to be able to rebuild their business?
Thank you, RJ, for that very important question. And of course, thank you so much also to IPOPhil for having me here in this very important forum. And of course, once again, good morning, colleagues. Before I answer directly your question, RJ, allow me to give some context on the importance of the IP system and intellectual property. This is in relation to the main topic of the panel discussion, wherein we mentioned that SMEs are the backbone of our economy. The context is that 99% of our registered businesses are SMEs, and that they provide 60% of employment and contribute around 36% to our GDP. With this premise, it is important that we have to make sure that SMEs must be able to thrive not just in competition, but also in crisis. Now, the question is, how will they thrive in competition? Will they compete bigger, better, smarter, or different? I would submit that with the global competition out there, with big businesses out there, the strategic approach is for you to compete strategically. Thus, you have to compete smarter and in a different manner. Again, when you talk about being smart, being different, you cannot afford not to talk about innovation. Now, the second aspect is that how will they thrive in times of crisis? Again, the approach is that they must be able to survive, recover, and of course, relaunch their business. And the skill there is that adaptability. And again, we cannot afford not to talk about innovation when you talk about adaptability. So with this context, RJ, the key here is really innovation. And in the legal spectrum, when you talk about innovation, you cannot afford not to talk about the IP system. An IP system, I always say, is a great equalizer because here the rules are uniform. Be, either you are big, you are small, as far as protection and enforcement is concerned, the rules are the same. And our SMEs, our businessmen for that matter, they have to understand that IP basically has three aspects. One is that IP is a right. Second, IP is an asset. So it being an asset, it has value. You can mortgage, sell it, dispose it like an ordinary tangible property. And most importantly, the third aspect is that it is a tool. It is a policy tool. It is a leverage. So with this context, it gives the SME or the businessman at most advantage in dealing with his or her competitors. Now, in the IP system, we are talking also of innovation. And since competition is global, it is also important that we make sure that outside, our SMEs, our businessmen have enhanced market access. And when I say enhanced market access, I'm talking about international trade. We have to open the market for trade and investment so that their market will not just be confined locally, but globally. And in this context, again, it is very important that we have to make sure that the rules of the game are the same or at least standardized so that their rights, their properties, their value will be protected. Now, going back now to that question about the ideal landscape, how to power innovation and creativity. The scenario in that ideal landscape is basically an environment that generates ideas. In an environment that enhances ideas and make these ideas into reality. This is the very essence of innovation and creativity. The question then is, how do you create this environment? More than establishing the need or the necessity or even a solution for that matter, it is important that SMEs must have organization. It must have interface with the team and the community. I would say collaboration with the government. And lastly, strategic mindset. For example, when I say organization, I mean here structure on how you manage your resources and prioritize your ideas. There are many ideas, but most of them get lost in the process or may not be feasible under given circumstances. While ideas beget ideas, ideas can also nullify these ideas. But then again, in any business, in any endeavor, the core asset is your intangible asset. So that means your intellectual property. The second is that you must have an interface with your team and the community because your ideas need to be processed and tested before execution. Again, on this particular element, it is important that an SME maintains connection and interaction not only with your team, but also with your suppliers, consumers, and even advertisers. Because sometimes the role of these players are merged into one. So, meaning sometimes your consumers are your advertisers. Sometimes your consumers are even your designers. Sometimes, as a businessman, you are just an integrator or a blender of all these various roles. Third element that I mentioned is, of course, collaboration with government. And I think ASEC Jean also mentioned this. This is very important because legally, operationally, and also in the institutional aspect, the government can provide you the necessary requirements from assistance, be it loan, support, whatever, mentorship, and even upskilling or reskilling. And on this particular element, dito papasok ngayon yung 7Ms ni Secmon. Yung mindset, mentorship, money, market, machines, and of course, I forgot the other M's. Sorry, Secmon. And then the fourth one is strategic mindset. So meaning you must have the capacity to integrate all the elements needed to pursue your ideas, to ensure that intangible assets are properly protected. Again, at this particular stage, you have to consider now IP protection. Because at the end of the day, your ultimate asset would be your IP. And in terms of rebuilding, recovering, or relaunching your business, you will have to bank on your intangible assets. In fact, I always illustrate that as an example to laymanize the value of IP. You can just imagine if you were able to build a good brand, even in times of crisis, if you close down because of some untoward circumstances, like for example, a good brand like San Miguel, once you open, basically companies, financial institutions would line up to support you because they can trust your brand. That's how important IP protection is. And of course, you must be able to allocate and manage your resources well. So again, on this particular aspect as an SME, it does not require mere just organizational skills, but strategy. So that's all, RJ. And I hope I was able to contextualize.
Thank you so much, Sir Alan. I appreciate that one because the different perspective here is really how you can see IP as a strategy, but at the same time as an ecosystem, di ba? I mean, when you get your IP, it's just part of a larger ecosystem na, okay, may IP ka na, but you've got to build the brand. You've also got to collaborate with the government. You also have to do strategic partnerships. I think that's what our MSMEs really have to see, that's the full picture of this one. Thanks so much. And thanks for championing IPOPhil there, especially in the DTI, sir. Maraming salamat po. Moving on, the next one, Deputy Director Ted, sir. I know what's very nice is that the perspective that we're bringing, because earlier on when we spoke, of course, with Sir Alan, was bring the IPOPhil perspective into the DTI. Pero kaya naman po, it's very interesting because it's about consumer protection. But aside from that one, it's also about enforcement of our IPs abroad. Can you help us get a better perspective of how you see our MSMEs really driving innovation, using our IP to build their business for them, and of course enforcing it to make sure that we benefit from our IP assets? Sir, wala pa po. Can you unmute there, sir?
There you go.
Hi, sir. There you go, sir.
Okay. We want to give more time also to still other guests. So let me just concentrate on one issue. I've prepared a lot of points here, but let us concentrate on the issue of protection. And in that aspect, we'd like to point two things. One, the legal framework is already evolving. So government is working not only in IPOPhil, but basically as they started with the legislative body of our government. So there is pending now the Internet Transactions Bill. But one point that I think we would like to push there is the liability of our landlord, as well as the liability of, we have our friend from Lazada here, online platforms. We would like to stress that liability is not really an issue of us versus you, but us capacitating the poor, the lower, the MSMEs to have an equal footing with the bigger guys and, more importantly, those who want to violate the law. So we are encouraging our MSMEs to continue in their development of their IPs, but encourage you that government is addressing it. We hope to see the Internet Transactions Bill to be able to pass Congress, that it can provide adequate protection that it's supposed to give to our MSMEs. Second, we are amending the IP code right now, particularly in many aspects, but particularly in its enforcement portion. And let me stress the fact that in its enforcement portion, we are empowering the IEO, or the Intellectual Property Rights Enforcement Office, to all the more work with other government agencies, which is the National Committee on Intellectual Property Rights, to be able to jointly, as one whole government, work together in sync, in quick and proper cadence, so that we can help all, including our MSMEs, to protect their brands. The second aspect of the one that we would like to stress for our MSMEs is go digital. A lot of things are, admittedly, it's all digital now. But sometimes we tend to forget that we'll just wait. Oh, it will come back. Face-to-face will come back. We cannot wait for that time. So right now, we encourage our MSMEs to go digital. And in that way, we tie it up with the issue of protection and enforcement. Please note that with the program of our DG Barba, we have to go on digitization between now and the coming years for IPOFIL. We already can be reached, our services can be reached by mobile. So download your apps, Mobiliz, Mobiliz, and you can get in touch with all the services of IPOFIL, even with your mobile facility. Also, you can file everything online already. We're perhaps just refining some more details, but basically all our main services are accessible online. Payment is made online. So on those 2 points, protection of your IP, the law, the framework is already ongoing. The way it is right now, it is already structured to be able to accept what the law would come out to be and go on a digital platform. Thank you to Lazada and to other e-platforms. We are continuously persuading our platform workers and sources, including Facebook, to be able to get into that form of environment where IP is respected, where IP is protected, and IP is promoted. So on those short notes, RJ, I will give and yield more time to our guest. Maraming salamat po, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Sir Ted, thanks so much. And just as a note, no, as you know, si Sir Alan kanina was somebody who came from IPOFIL, then went to DTI. Ito naman si Sir Ted naman from DTI to IPOFIL. So napapalitan lang pa yung mga tao dyan, which is really great, and it's a great way, you know, for them to work together to build an asset for the country through IPOFIL. Now, moving on quickly, kay Dr. Wanili naman, Dr. Wanilio, I know that your particular interest is really also for competitiveness and innovation of our MSMEs. So you've seen the whole picture, you know, and then particularly in this pandemic, competitiveness and innovation was just highlighted or even accelerated. What is your advice naman for our MSMEs during this time, on top of what has been spoken about by our previous resource speakers on how they can, what can you think, how can Filipino brands become more competitive and innovative, at the same time utilize IP to gain that competitiveness and innovative edge?
Yeah, thank you, RJ. I think our other resources speakers have already talked about the operative words. Number one is ecosystem. The other one is collaboration. Now, I like this question because it also allows me to introduce a very important initiative by the DTI, of course, among many others, and that is the Regional Inclusive Innovation Centers, or what we call RICs. You know, so we're thinking really of the RICs, talking about how else can they be resilient and how can they function given the current circumstances during the pandemic or even post-COVID crisis. We're thinking that really all of our SMEs should really operate in a particular situation or landscape that is much more organic to them, to drive up innovation and creativity and power economic recovery that is much more salient to the locality. And so this might just be common sense, but certainly we're talking about SMEs in a supportive community, in a venue that is much more dynamic and conducive to continuous learning. I mean, we've heard some of our resource persons talking about continuous learning activities. And so the avenue for human capital development should also be fostered within those communities. We need open access portals for information search, information sharing, and information exchange. And of course, like what Yusek Bless was saying, there's got to be a venue for the convergence of all government programs and activities conducive to innovation and collaboration. So imagine an SME, if it's calling, for instance, for some help, it can call on government agencies, it can call on their local souks or other private higher education institutions for technical solutions, products or insights resulting from research that may have practical applications on improving the enterprise, whether these are new products, processes, systems, or new solutions. Or SMEs themselves can be the sources of information or insights for local collaborative initiatives among SMEs, with other SMEs, or with even research institutions. And so the RICS as a venue can facilitate all of these dialogues. The other thing too that's important for us to remember is that you can go in and out of the educational system now. And the SMEs really demonstrate the need for continuous learning. Of course, there may be open courses now that if you're interested, you can always tap on them or kind of access them. But certainly the RICS can also organize those courses that can more or less benefit, let's say, a group of SMEs on, let's say, knowledge gaps or competency gaps that are much more salient to their needs. And so upskilling, reskilling, reorientation, and other human resource trainings, in my view, can now be much more customized to local SMEs so that they can be also much more resilient given their local circumstances. The other one that I was raising is open access portals for information search, information sharing, and information exchange. These can be portals that can give us information on who and where are the experts I can call on. What are the market needs nationally and globally? What are the customers' needs in the
I know
future?
na.
What are their preferences, behaviors? How do customer make decisions? I think all of these things, if these are provided in an open access form to our SMEs, I think makes for even better decision making, for better strategies, and I should say business tactics. And lastly, I'd like to talk about the convergence of government programs and activities in the region. In the RICS, we're talking about really government talking to each other so that we don't have all of these disconnected and disjointed activities. And already we're seeing that a lot with DICT, DOST, DTI, CHED, TESDA, DILG, and of course, with IPOFIL providing us with much needed information on how best we can really capitalize on our IP assets. As an educator, I keep on saying that really the knowledge-based society is where we are now, and it's a world of intangible assets and brains. And so the real empires now are the empires of the mind. And so for us to keep on talking to SMEs, giving them this particular mindset and value orientation that their brand is an asset and should be protected all the time, given this particular ecosystem that we're also trying to establish through the RICS. I think will just make for a much more vibrant and much more tactical and strategic core of SMEs. So I think I can entertain some questions later, but that's exactly where we are in terms of fostering innovation and competitiveness locally, and hoping that as they go up the chain, they can make a mark in the global market and in the global customers. So, but everything starts local, as they say. You play it locally, but think globally.
Thanks so much, Dr. Vanilio. Just in case, I know that the IPOFIL manages the network of SUCs. Again, SUCs stands for State Universities and Colleges, and HEIs is Higher Education Institutions, right? And
Yes.
RICS is the regional innovation centers. Just in
Yes.
case you are an MSME, how do you get in touch with all these different? How do I reach out and become part of that one? And how do I know what the agenda is going to be? How do I know I can be trained?
Right. We started this RJ with 4 pilot cities or regions, such as in Region 5, Cebu, CDO, and Davao. And there are different touch points in organizing the RICS. Sometimes it's through the state universities and colleges. Sometimes it's through the private higher education institutions. Sometimes it's through the local chambers. And so I think once they kind of converge together, because sometimes it can be virtual, sometimes there's almost like in the beginning when we were organizing this at the very, very nascent stages. It's almost like a courtship, among all of these agencies, both government and private. And so it's I think it's an evolving type of thing as to who are the main touch points. But certainly for now, because it's there was a roadmap and as an agreement that was signed on by the DTI, the UST, the ICT, CHED, and TESDA, the government agencies are still the main touch points for the RICS. Just in case anyone is interested, let's say in the new RICS that are evolving, let's say in Cagaya, in Central Luzon, Calabarzon, and Zamboanga, it's pretty much our mainstay government agencies such as the DTI, the DUST that ought to be contacted for this. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much, Dr. Manila, for enlightening us on that one. And just to an earlier point, if you're listening to Deputy Director General Ted Pascua, no, if you also have concerns which are enforcement related, I just want to take note of this one. You can get in touch with operations at ipofil.gov.ph. So again, if you feel that your IP is being infringed upon, these are the agencies that you can reach out on. That's operations at ipofil.gov.ph. Now, moving on quickly to our next resource speaker is a gentleman, and over here now that again we're just restating again where you can report IP violations, operations at ipofil.gov.ph. Moving on to our next resource speaker, hangang-hanga ako sa next resource speaker ko, especially as a fellow consul in the Consular Corps of the Philippines. Siya po yung head ng of our Phil export here in the Philippines. I'd like to call on Consul Sergio Ortiz Luis. President, sir, we have a question for you. Many people over here, many of their MSMEs, their aspiration is to go global, but I'm sure you have a lot of experience for many of them. Paano po sila magiging global ngayon, especially sa panahon ng pandemya? What is your advice to our MSMEs as they try to create more innovative products for a global market habang sa panahon ng pandemya?
Well, maybe RJ, I will probably put the scenario first, no? What is existing? The Philippine MSME is the most underbanked sector in the whole of Asia compared to the other countries in Asia. And all throughout these years, we're talking of how to be able to empower them. Earlier it was said that 98% are SME of our enterprises are MSME, and they only account for 60-65% of employment, but they only account for 30%, almost 30% of GDP. Why is this so? We are very far off from the usual saying that MSME should be the backbone of the economy. We are nowhere there, simply because over the years we have neglected and have not taken seriously this thing about empowering MSME. Every year we come up with programs. In legislature we come up with the laws. We come up with programs in the government government banks, GFIs, and even the executive department. But they are mostly token. They do not really even scratch the surface. 18 years ago, we passed the first Magna Carta for MSME. And it was rendered useless because Bangko Sentral issued alternative compliance instead of lending to MSME, and nobody got the loans. So it was useless. And then we after 10 years, when it expired, we amended it. We came up with a new one, and we made sure that this alternative compliance will not be there. Somewhere along the line, there were also the IRR was not well crafted, and again, it's near to useless. And we are now trying to amend it after 18, 19 years. And we proposed, and DTI supported us here, that why don't we think out of the box? Why don't we seriously consider really empowering the MSME if we are really serious? The government has to really invest on it. They should not look at empowering SME as something that's an expense. It's supposed to be a capital that the government can use. We propose that in the Magna Carta that is being made, that at least 20% of the CCT fund, the CCT, the conditional cash transfer, which being given away for free. And we don't even know what's the result of that. No? But we say at least 20% initially. Let's devote it for lending to SMEs. And therefore, the conditions should not be like the traditional bank conditions. No? The conditions here is that being able to collect 97, 95% repayment, but it should, how many workers have you employed? Have you graduated to this? Those are the main consideration. And therefore, you might not be able to recover 95, 97%. Maybe you will only recover 60%. But look at the employment it will create. Look at the what you're giving away for free. These people can be employed, and it will be sustainable. And yet it cannot pass. So again, 10 years from now, we'll still be talking about what can we do for SMEs. And unless the government really puts its mind, think out of the box, uh, that is going to happen. We'll still be a laggard in developing our SMEs. Fortunately, there are some bright linings. Like for instance, technology is something that can be used by SMEs. The IP system can be can put value to their assets. No? Some companies probably would have more valuable IPs than a system than their office space or building or factory because they're very important, demonstrated by our previous speakers. So these are the bright spots. But basically, if we really want to be able uh, to empower our SME, government for once has to take it seriously. We're still talking about it. Our neighbors have done it already. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Consul Ortiz Luis. Now, we have actually a comment here from the chat box from a good friend from the Fashion Design Coalition. She's actually saying, "So Luis, that is so true. We are underbanked. We are underbanked or underbacked as MSMEs. We are glad that now at least we feel that the government is now listening and empowering us even more. So thank you for providing us with that perspective. No, so hopefully Secretary Mon is actually listening intently. I can see it right now, along with the Director Barba and the rest, to see how they can really help MSMEs a lot more, especially during this time, and supporting them to go export-wise as well. No, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And moving on quickly to our next speaker, may I kindly invite Yusek Ruth Castello. Yusek Ruth, really the advocate for consumer protection for the Filipino consumer. How do you also marry, aside from yourself, how can we protect both our consumer, also build, help our MSMEs build their IPs at the same time, while of course ensuring consumer protection? Ma'am, I think you're on mute.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Secretary Lopez, and of course, DG Roel Barba. Thank you for the invitation. RJ, I'd just like to say that, of course, we have been talking about this, and I have heard the previous speakers, and they said that particularly Yusek Carissa and Yusek Ted Pasqua saying that they should go digital. And I agree with that. Even Senator Pimentel has already said in his interviews that there is no other way but to go digital. First, of course, there are adversities right now that we face during the pandemic. But for MSMEs, they should even push for this. A lot of businesses have closed down or stopped operations, but our MSMEs need not be discouraged. They just need to adapt to the new trend, and they probably reinvent themselves by going digital. There are a lot of tools that we can use right now. And of course, there are also a lot of platforms. In the perspective of consumer protection, I would just like to say to our MSMEs that the DTI is there. We are watching, of course, especially in the consumer protection group. We handle all kinds of consumer complaints, and we are the ones that monitor online and offline stores. So especially during this pandemic, and the reasons for complaints on consumers are, aside from the liability for the product and service imperfection, and then there are also deceptive and unfair practices. But for MSMEs here, these complaints should be viewed as an opportunity so that they can build strong and lasting relationships with their consumers. We want them to increase patronage from the consumers. The consumer complaints may be also viewed by MSMEs here as a valuable information as to how they can improve their businesses. And of course, the relationship, also building the relationship with the consumer, so that like I mentioned, to increase consumer confidence, increase patronage. Now, on intellectual property, it is also very important for all our MSMEs to consider registering their brands, brand names, or logos, or what have you, as intellectual property. I also heard earlier that these are rights, of course, that SMEs need to be able to avail of. And of course, if you are registered, like in consumer protection, we always encourage businesses to make sure that they are registered. And with me working on this is Assistant Secretary Jean Pacheco. She's the queen of e-commerce, and of course would like all businesses to have themselves registered, even those online businesses. If you are a registered business, it will be an advantage also if you have your intellectual property registered as well. It is very critical in developing innovation, and so that you can sustain your business locally and or maybe globally. And we also have to take note for our SMEs that maybe very few that you can count with your fingers, large companies that started as large. Most companies around the world have started as either micro or small, and then built their businesses into empires. So it would help a lot if they are registered with the IPOFIL. Their brands will become famous eventually, and the consumers will of course trust these brands. Like we understand there is a trust seal, trusted brands seal that is going around. So in terms of intellectual property registration for businesses, we would encourage all of them, whether you are a micro business or a small business. You start small and then eventually grow big. And then it can also, these businesses, of course, will be able to reap the full benefits of registration, and then maybe also consumer protection. It is very, very important for all of the businesses, no matter how small, regardless of size, to have themselves registered. And the brands that I mentioned earlier, if these are registered, no one can take it away from you, and no one can remove that right from you. And you can use that brand and make yourself popular and make yourself be patronized by your consumers. But the very important thing that I have to say is MSMEs should be able to deal with their customers properly. Of course, how you handle consumer complaints, how you handle the business, how you communicate with them, or how you provide the relationship with them, especially after sales handling. after you have delivered the service, after you have delivered the goods, regardless, no matter if you are registered or not, if you do not handle the complaint or the consumer properly after you have delivered it, it might be a little bit more difficult for you to grow your brand. So for all MSMEs, what I'd like to say from the point of view not only of consumer protection, but from the point of view as a consumer myself, it is very important that consumers are able to trust the brand. So the best that you have yourselves registered with the IPOFEL, and best also that you have your businesses registered with the pertinent government agencies. Patronage is very important. Who knows? Micro businesses right now will maybe eventually be as large as all the large businesses that are that we all know. So that is all, RJ. Thank you
Thank you
very
so much,
much.
Yusek Ruth. It's so nice because at least it's an inspirational note to many of our small businesses that they can be the next big one, and to realize that consumer protection actually is to their benefit. If people complain, that's not a critique. It's actually an opportunity for them to improve their business at the same time. Having said that, I would like to thank all the speakers in the second panel discussion. May I kindly ask our team in IPOFIL if we can have a group photo of those in the second panel, and if Secretary Ramon Lopez can join us for that photo together with Director Roel Barba. Just one picture lang po. If you can have them here again, can we call on Yusek Bless, Isek, Hepti, Deputy Director Ted Pascual. We also have Sir Dr. Juanilio and Yusek Ruth, if they can join us for the photo. And of course, Secretary Boy de la Peña. Sir, kumusta po kayo dyan, sir? Okay. Smile, everybody, please. Smile for one photo. 1, 2, 3. Again, 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much, po. And now moving on quickly to our final part and the grand finale of our talk here today. It is our IP Grand Forum. This is a discussion for MSMEs to recover and sustain businesses during this pandemic and move on to the new normal. And if it's okay, no, if I just may beg the indulgence of our other speakers here, no, Secretary Boy de la Peña has to depart early. So before that one, can I kindly invite Secretary Secretary de la Peña, Boy de la Peña of the Department of Science and Technology, to share with us the importance of developing science and technology for the advancement of our MSMEs. Secretary Boy, please.
Thank you very much, RJ. So this is going to be quick. I have only 3 points to suggest or to present. First of all, I think that when we enable MSMEs to use technology and to innovate, they themselves actually can come up with products and processes that can add to our country's IP assets. So we make it a point that in all our programs that assist MSMEs, for example, our Small Enterprise Technology Upgrading Program, or our Startup Assistance Program, including the Technology Business Incubators, our program now for assisting OFWs to become technology technopreneurs, and the partnership projects that we have for research between industry and the academe. We make it a point that IP is part of the briefing, the orientation, and the assistance that we give to them. Secondly, I just would like to mention that from our experience, maybe I should suggest, and I know it is already being done, all organizations, whether public or private, that assist our MSMEs to be competitive should include also a package of policies involving IP, starting from their internal policy of assisting these MSMEs for IP protection, in terms of data sharing policies, in terms of technology transfer protocols, and in terms of IP evaluation. That should be part of their policies in the organization. And lastly, I think we definitely subscribe to the whole of government and whole of nation approach. And I am very proud to say that recently we have executed a memorandum of agreement with the DTI and IPO Philippines on what we call a SciTech Superhighway program. This is really a sort of facilitating processes. For example, there are many things that need to be done at IPO Philippines that can already be done at our end, okay, so that the protection can be processed faster. So yun lang ang share ko. We really should include the policies on IP protection in all our assistance programs. Thank you very much, RJ.
Thank you so much. Secretary Boy, before I let you go ahead, sir, baka naman meron ka mga inspirational stories na mga IP na yung mga produkto natin na from the DOST that's going to go world class right now as a result of working together with the DOST DTI.
Yes. Well, first of all, in response to the pandemic, I think we were one of the first countries in this region to be able to come out with our own RT-PCR diagnostic kit. So when we locked down in March, we really took advantage of the technology platforms that we had on dengue and leptospirosis and moved over to COVID-19. And so by April 3, we already had an FDA-approved RT-PCR test. The same is true with the modeler that we developed, particularly again for dengue and for measles and typhoid fever. So when the COVID-19 came, the Ateneo group which we were assisting was easily able to re-engineer or their modeler to fit into the COVID-19 problem. And nowadays we are helping our developers of our local ventilators to really get their IP protection. But more importantly, the MSMEs have really come out with very innovative projects during the pandemic, and maybe that can deserve a longer discussion. But last week we featured them. These are the MSMEs we are supporting who came up with innovative projects, whether it is a surgical mask or whether it is a new patch that are used by diabetic patients, or whether it is additional health supplements. They did it by themselves. Okay, so after our assistance, they are now more conscious about innovation and IP protection. So that's the only thing that I can share.
Wow, fantastic stories, Secretary Boy. Very brief but very inspirational. So palakpakan naman dyan para sa ating DOST. Ayan, pwede rin i-IP natin lahat yan, ha, Secretary Boy. I-IP natin lahat ng mga yan para world-class po yung mga produkto natin. Again, maraming salamat, Secretary.
Pati mga estudyante namin sa Philippine Science High School, nagpapa-IP protection na.
Ayan, start them while they're young. Great job. Thank you so much, Secretary Boy de la Peña. Maraming salamat po for your time. And jumping off from the discussion of Secretary Boy de la Peña, sabi niya, importansya po talaga ng innovation sa mga produkto, di ba? Re-engineering, di ba sanabi kanina, when you create an invention, if you bring it to a new industry, it's innovation, right? And right now, I would love to hear from the next speaker who has been such a great, staunch advocate for entrepreneurship. And also, my colleague ever since our Go Negosyo days, I'm so happy that he's been here and helping really all of our industries come back, survive, and thrive amidst this new normal. Can I please welcome my idol, Secretary Mon Lopez, to share with us the importance of MSMEs and innovation, and of course, the importance po ng IP. Secretary Mon, welcome. Thanks for attending everything. We're so thankful that you're still here.
Yeah, thank you, RJ. And again, thank you to Sec Boy for really joining us in this grand IP forum. Thank you to all the panelists, the speakers before me this whole morning. You've been really very helpful in making IP be understood by everyone out there, especially the micro SMEs. Again, congratulations to IPO Phil, Director General Roel Barba, kanyang mga DDG, sila Ted Pasqua, sila DDG Nelson, and of course the IPO Phil team. Hindi po mapakakaila ang halaga ng intellectual property at sa ating, especially sa mga micro SMEs, lalo na dito sa recovery na kinakailangan sa ating ekonomiya dahil sa COVID-19 pandemic. Kaya naman nakalatag ang enhancement ng IP or intellectual property knowledge ng ating mga micro SMEs under the We Recover as One strategy recommendation na sa IATF. Sa DTI, parte din po ang IP sa ating recovery strategy para sa mga businesses. Nakwento namin dati yung rebuild. Ito yung revitalizing businesses, investments, livelihood, and domestic demand. It's geared towards conquering economic challenges brought about by the COVID-19. For example, sa pagbangon ng ating struggling creative sector, which includes software development, gaming, animation, film, music, graphic designs, activities, among others, importante yung usaping copyright tulad ng kinikwento ni RJ sa kanyang libro. No? We also pursue in greater heights for our design-oriented sectors like furnitures. Diyan naman pag-uusapan yung industrial design. In innovation and technology, kapartner natin ng DOST dyan, discussions will be inevitably revolving around patents and utility models. Sa usapin naman ng branding na kinikwento nila President Cheryl, and ang experience ko rin po sa brand building in my past life, ang mga usaping branding yan, nandyan ang trademark kung saan active registrants din dapat ang mga micro SMEs at yung halaga ng trademark, explain po natin yan. Para mabigyan ng value ang mga produkto ng mga micro SMEs, kailangan talaga maprotektahan sila ng intellectual property. They have to own the trademark at itong protection nila, lalo na pag lumaki na yung value ng brand at dyan na po importansya na protected ang inyong brand at naka-register dapat. As previously discussed, we've seen how fast and responsive IP system could make local innovation and creativity projects a sustainable and steady source of livelihood in the long term. This in turn will create more jobs and employment opportunities that will benefit our people and boost our country's economic growth in the post-pandemic future. Despite IP's importance, the awareness of IP remains low in micro SMEs. That's why importante yung mga ganitong forum talagang to broaden the acceptance, the understanding, and the importance of IP. No? Alam niyo po, in many of yung mga M&As, mergers and acquisition that we handled before, ito alam ni DG Roel, magkakasama kami dyan, yung ang halaga talaga ng business ay nakadepende ng malaki sa kanyang IP, sa intellectual property na pag-aari niya. Diyan po talaga kumukuha ng malaking valuation. Any business that I can think of. Kasi diyan po talaga nakasalala yung halaga ng business. In a business, pagka yan po ay nagkaroon na ng, let's say, M&A transaction in the future, pag vinalue nyo yung mga equipment, mga makinarya niyan, nag-depreciate na yan at wala halos halaga yan pag binenta mo yung business mo. At yung mga iba pang sistema mo doon. Napakaliit lang ng valuation na lalabas. Alam niyo kung saan malaki yung value? Yung brand. Yung brand na dapat ikaw ang may-ari. Yan dapat naka-trademark at ikaw ang may-ari. Dahil yan po in effect ang binibili ng buyer pag binibili yung business mo. Gaano kalaki yung market share mo? Gaano kalaki yung benta mo? Ano ang share mo sa industriya that the brand has? Sherry talked about brand equity. And that is really the source of the value of any company. So it's important, siguraduhin yung kayo ang may-ari ng brand na yan. At wherever you operate, ay kayo at protected yung brand niyo. So ganun po ka-importante yan. Andyan po ang halaga ng business. And that has to be yours very clearly. So very important po yan. Sa pagka yan dyan ang value whenever you sell, let's say, your business in the future, or even if you list it in the stock market, in the capital market. Pag listed po yan, it's a trademark that you own, it's your market share that you own. Nandyan po yung halaga ng business. So again, DTI remains committed in helping IPO to help micro SMEs recover through IP, especially in recent months na kailangan nating enable ang mga SMEs. Ang DTI rin po last July through the PTTC, Philippine Trade Training Center, Global Micro SME Academy, partnered with IPO Field in helping micro SMEs create a more IP-centric business model. In PTTC's training, IP is integrated in their training curriculum and micro SMEs are enabled to create their own IP assets and protect them. Now, DTI is also a signatory to the partnership na kinuwento po ni ni Secretary Boy de la Peña earlier, no, with the OST in this superhighway project. Ito po, meron ng over 1,000 intellectual property applications of researchers supported by DOST that will benefit from the fast lanes implemented by IPOFIELD. This will reduce the waiting time for innovators before they can exploit their IPs in their market safely, with the assurance that their IP is now legally theirs. This effort to hasten the registration process is indeed a laudable because technology moves at the neck-breaking pace. Kaya dapat bilisan talaga ang pagkilos ng ating gobyerno sa pagsuporta sa ating mga innovators para matulungan natin sila maging competitive even in global markets. We want to highlight the aspect of IP in driving innovation. Innovation is critical not only in recovery, but in future-proofing your growth. In line with the DTI's flagship innovation program, yung inclusive innovation-led industrial strategy, pinupursue po yan ng DTI, tatlong IS, IQS. We need to keep innovation in the mind of micro SMEs as we build a modernized Philippine business. With this in mind, IP will encourage our micro SMEs to create high-impact technologies. We know that to create quality technology, it takes time, effort, and capital for research and development. With the assurance of a return of investment, may balik po, nandiyan ang future value ng ating business. Napaka-importante po na having this time-bound exclusive right over your technology. Our micro SMEs will be motivated further to move up the value chain and work on the high-value, socially relevant, and in-demand innovation. And for this, we are thankful for IPOFIELD efforts in increasing the integration of IP in the local innovation landscape. Ito'y mula sa pag-promote ng patent analytics as a business strategy development tool hanggang sa pagtulong sa patent drafting and application up to grants sa ating mga innovators. Dito po napakahalaga ng IPOFIELD lalo na sa kanilang Innovation and Technology Support Office, ITSO, banner program na nakakatulong sa pag-scale up ng innovation. Ang ITSO ay mga offices na nasa universities, colleges, or research and development institutions. They help innovators within the schools or R&D centers throughout their IP journey, from technology development to commercialization. The contribution of ITSO to overall 2020 Global Innovation Index, yung GII, yung ranking, talagang napakalaki po ng contribution. In 2019, ITSOs accounted for 54% of total resident filings for patents and 50% in utility model applications. Our utility models filings, which moved up to 8th rank in the 2020 GII rankings from 15th rank, was identified as one of the highest drivers for the country's overall gain this year. Given how instrumental ITSOs are, DTI's BOI, Board of Investment, now puts ITSOs that achieve a certain amount of IP activities as eligible for fiscal and non-fiscal incentives under the Investment Priorities Plan. In celebration of IP Month, BOI held this April an informational event to help ITSOs take advantage of its IPP incentives. We hope to see this helps more ITSOs elevate the level of their innovations and attract more universities, colleges, and R&D centers to be part of the IPOFIELD ITSO program. Aside from supporting ITSO, BOI is also encouraging the commercialization of yet uncommercialized patents by having included this activity in the IPP. With greater patents commercialized, we see our IP receipts under the GII further growing. The Philippines IP receipts, which climbed 9% notches to 78 from 87 in the GII report shows that Philippine innovations are not just expanding in number, but are likewise gaining more economic value and commercial utilization. In closing, with IP for MSMEs keyed into our IQS and the recognition of IP integrated into our rebuild strategy, we can create an inclusive innovation and entrepreneurship environment that can hasten our country's post-pandemic recovery. This will help us build back better by providing our people a more comfortable and greater quality of life, as well as giving future generation of Filipinos a legacy in IP from which they can benefit from. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay tayong lahat. And happy National IP Month.
Secretary Mon, thank you so much, Secretary Mon. Pasensya lang po, I just have one question for you kanina po na na-inspire tayo ni Secretary Boy sa mga kwento niyo ng mga successful case studies and examples mula sa pandemya, kasi syempre ating mga MSMEs medyo sad sila because obviously nagsara yung mga negosyo, pero some entrepreneurs and MSMEs took this opportunity to see the opportunity in crisis at may ginawa silang panibagong produkto. Sir, can you inspire us with some of the products na nag-innovate nung time na at talagang lumaki at lumago nung panahon ng pandemya because of their creativity and their innovation?
Well, yung mga produkto na nakikita natin ngayon, lalo na itong pag-bulusok, pag-increase ng e-commerce as a business model, is really the pivoting practices that happened, that took place. You know, last year, ang nag-register lang na online business model sa atin nung first part before pandemic, 1,700. But during the second half of last year, naging 88,000 ang nag-register.
Wow!
All e-commerce.
Wow.
So the business model itself has changed. And of course, if you look at mga products, ang dami na dyan, yung mga health-related, mga gadgets, lahat ng mga pang work from home, lahat na ng gadgets na lumabas, these are innovations and patents and designs, utility models that are really important na mapahalagahan and must be registered, especially ngayong ngayong pandemic, at these are the products that are coming out and more to come, definitely. Ang importante lang, the awareness should be out there for micro SMEs to be conscious of really registering all these patents, trademarks, and yung utility models para talagang protected sila and they can really find greater value in all these discoveries and inventions.
Thanks so much, Secretary Mon. Ako rin nag-register na kami sa IPOFIL ng Mercato and all the other affiliated brands because we know that it's a asset that must be protected if we want to grow this brand, not in the Philippines lang, but even outside of the country.
Kwento ni Orais pa kanina, nandyan talaga yung value nung yung kanyang business, no? Yung at saka yung merkato that you have. Better talaga naka-register yan.
Yan, sir. Again, Secretary Mon, maraming salamat sa panahon at oras ninyo. We're so glad to see you back in the pink of health.
Thank
and
you.
Mabuhay pa kayo as you help get our country back on track. We're very happy to have you over here. And to round out our discussion this afternoon, may I please welcome back the man pulling the strings, the man behind IPOFIL here right now, none other than our Director General Ruel Barba to discuss the importance of securing IP registrations for MSMEs. Pero hindi lang yung mga MSMEs, pati yung mga kasama sa ating mga creative economy, yung mga creators, artists, and also ating mga people from the scientific community, ating mga inventors of products who can be considered part of the micro and small, medium enterprises. Director Barba, welcome. The floor is yours.
Maraming salamat ulit, RJ. Maraming salamat po at nagtsatsaga po kayo. Nakasama namin ngayon. So far, 161 pa tayo. At iba pa po yung sa FB Live. FB Live din po tayo kanina pa. So sana po sa mga discussion natin kanina, ang ating mga makikisig at magagandang panauhin ay naliwanagan kayo kung gaano kahalaga ang intellectual property sa negosyo, lalong-lalo na sa mga MSMEs. Kaya ngayon, it's time we test this into our own experience. No? Pagkatapos natin talakayan ngayon, suriin ninyo na mabuti kung ano sa negosyo ninyo ang IPable. Yung nakikita ninyo na may potential at magiging susi ng inyong pagunlad. Ang trademark, halimbawa, kaakibat niyan, ang sinasabi nga kanina na branding strategy at values ng kumpanya na kung saan ay mas pinapahalagahan ng consumer kaysa ang produkto. Protektahan nyo po yan. Ang marketing content o vlogs ninyo na pinagtatrabuhan ninyo over the years, basta original ang pagkaayos ng mga nilalaman nito, copyrightable naman po yan. Kung tingin ninyo innovative ang inyong IP, bago at may technical step ito, magbibigay ng solusyon sa isang problema, pwedeng gamitin sa industriya, baka pumasa po itong patent. O kung enhancement po ito ng isang imbensyon, baka utility model na po yan. Kung may disenyo kayo na bago at original, baka industrial design na pala yan. No? At pagkatapos na inyong pag-identify ng inyong IPs, ngayong araw din po, dumugin po ninyo kami. Pumunta po kayo sa IPO Field website at simulan nyo na po ang registration process. Wag na wag po ninyo ilalabas hanggat di pa nyo na-file. Kung i-expose ninyo yung IP ninyo sa publiko na hindi rehistrado sa IPO Field, malaki po ang posibilidad na may kumopya, lalo na mabilis mag-viral ngayon sa internet. At kung may kumopya at sila ang nag-register sa IPOFIL, mahabang usapin pa po yan kung magkakasuhan pa kayo. Pagbabawalan pa kayong gamitin yung IP ninyo at kayo ang naghirap dyan. No? Ngayon, kung gusto niyo naman na mas malaki pa o lumaki pa ang inyong IP portfolio o makita ang one best IP asset kung saan kayo makikilala, at yung magiging core competence ninyo na sinasabi po kanina ng mga panelists natin, today is the best time to do that and create. Put your imaginations to work. Let your dreams fly in the endless possibilities. Minsan, kailangan lang natin mag-isip out of the box. Huwag kayong mag-alala kung wala pa rin kayong maisip na magandang idea by the end of the day. Hindi po talaga madali ang lumikha at mag-imbento, kaya nagkakaroon ng IP in the first place. Ang importante ay you made one step forward in the ideation and brainstorming process, and that you sustain and do not lose sight of your long-term goals. Kami po sa IPOFIL, gagabayan po namin kayo mula sa pag-apply ng registration hanggang makuha ninyo ang registration certificates o grant. Marami po kami mga programa, initiatives para sa mga ating MSMEs. No? Ang Wanna Make a Mark program, where we empower women MSMEs by waiving their basic filing fees. Katuwang po natin dito ang DTI. Ang Inventor Assistance Program, kung saan naman po ay tinutulungan namin ang mga under-resourced inventors na makapag-patent globally at mga free IP learnings and capacity building workshops. Katulong po namin dito ang World Intellectual Property Organization or WIPO. Meron din po kaming pakikipagtulungan sa DOST kasamang DTI, nabanggit po ni Secboy kanina, na SciTech Superhighway, kung saan nagtalaga tayo ng isang special lane para sa mga DOST-assisted projects. At itong tulong po namin sa IPOFIL, hindi po ito magtatapos dahil lang sa pagtatapos ng IP month. In fact, we are more emboldened and inspired dahil sa pagdalo nyo po ngayon na nagpapatunay that there is a need to know more about IP and how to integrate it into our MSME model. Mahirap man makita ngayon, lalo na sa oras ng pandemya, pero we assure you, with a high-value IP product, samahan ng sound business strategies na napapaloob sa 7Ms ng DTI para sa MSMEs, and an IP-centric model, malayo po mararating ninyo at ng negosyo ninyo. So, suggestion po namin kay Secmon, magdagdag ng isang M para po maging 8 na tong M's natin na mas maswerte, sabi nga ng Chinese, ito po ay mark registration. MSME ngayon, multinational bukas. Ito ang success stories ng Jollibee, Potato Corner, Goldilocks. Kasama na rin natin ang Orispa. At marami pang iba na may mga registered IPs at may mga pangalan na tinitingala natin ngayon. Ito rin ang success story na gusto namin para sa inyo. Hindi malayang mangyari ito dahil napaka-interconnected na po ng mundo, providing more windows of opportunities at lalong-lalo na dahil malaki po ang tiwala naming taga-IPOFIL sa creativity, innovativeness, galing at sipag ng Pilipino. At kami po sa IPOFIL, patuloy naming ini-improve po ang aming serbisyo. Naka-online na po kami lahat. At yung turnaround po time po natin, yung sinasabi ni Yusek Carissa kanina na express lane, for your information, Yusek Carissa, meron na po kaming ID or industrial design in 5 days. Basta po kompleto ang formal requirements. Again, happy National IP Month to us all. I am fairly confident that from the success of this celebration, collaborations and transformations will follow. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Director General Barba. Sir, before you go ahead, sir, may tanong na sana po ako, di ba? For everybody, but before everything else, I just want to remind people who are listening right now to us on Zoom and Facebook, if you have any procedural questions, process questions, anything related to your own trademark or you want to patent something, if you're listening here right now, please visit the IPOFIL website, or you can also visit right now yung kanilang, I believe, kung may Facebook page, please visit. May mga nagbabantay, may mga chatbot kami because of people answering the phone. Director Roel, baka masabi mo lang po, how do they contact again IPOFIL just in case they want to register already or they have questions?
Yes, yun po, bisitahin lang nila yung website namin. It's www.ipofil.gov.ph. At yun, pwede na po kayo mag-file ng inyong application through our website. At kumpleto na po yun hanggang payment. So meron po kami mga payment facilities, Paymaya, DragonPay. And hopefully po may magdagdag pa kami ng ibang payment platforms in the future.
And sir, ito na lang po. Kanina po may mga success stories. Si Secretary De La Peña, si Secretary Muan, di ba? Maganda yung mga story niyan about how, especially during this pandemic, may naisip tayong panibagong produkto na pwede i-IP na ngayon. So, kaya naman po, what would you like to share? What is that, that great story that you had, especially during this pandemic, to help inspire our MSMEs that don't give up, make sure to file your IP at ito yung mararating po ninyo kahit sa panahon ng pandemya?
Yun na kwento kanina ni Secboy na PCR test, no? Na-register po namin yan last year, panahon ng pandemya, yung Gen Amplify. At during that time, kahit po naka-lockdown, pinagyayabang ko po na tinanggap po namin yung application nila for trademark, Gen Amplify, no, nila Dr. Destura. At I think, I'm not sure kung ano lang yung status ng application, but hindi po naging sagabal sa amin ang pandemya, no? Tuloy-tuloy po kaming nagtrabaho dahil nga po pinagyayabang din po namin, online na kami, no? At kami po rin siguro yung first government agency na merong mobile application. And we also assisted in identifying po yung mga health products at that time na pwede nang that belongs to the public domain para po magamit po ng ibang mga companies for repurposing, no? Kasama po diyan mga ventilators, even mga PPEs, no?
Parang naging entrepreneurial mindset yung mga taga-IPOFIL, ah.
Yes, kasi nga we have to share naman kung ano yung pwede namin may tulong para sa ating bansa, no?
Ang ganda po ng story ninyo. At again, maraming salamat ulit sa iyo, Director General Roel Barba, for putting together an amazing event here today. Sinabi nga ni Dr. Wanili dito sa ating chat box. This is one amazing, enlightening day for everybody who has been listening. Thank you so much for joining us for over at least 3 hours to join us for this really great forum. At bago tayo magtapos, I'd like to thank all the speakers, the guests, the participants listening to us via Zoom and of course Facebook for a very successful and engaging grand forum that will help us achieve our objectives to push our micro, small, and medium enterprises to create and to preserve their intellectual property assets that will help define their competitive positions in the local and the global markets. Please remember, with an effective IP strategy, our MSMEs can recover from this economic downturn. We can all bounce back together. This is our first step towards all the other steps we will make in our road to recovery. Again, mabuhay po kayo lahat. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay home. Ako po si RJ Ledesma, inyong IPOPhil Ambassador. Have a great day ahead. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay ang IPOPhil.
Thank you very much, RJ.
Thank you, Direk.
Sige, Idol, pakita mo pa yung abs mo.
Sure. Pagkatapos yun, 2 o'clock, pupunta naman ako sa